Johnston here.
Carrillo here.
Kavich here.
Guzikowski here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Great. Would you all please review the minutes from April 11th? I know you got them earlier, and when you're satisfied, please make a motion.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of the April 11th, 2017 meeting.
Guzikowski will second.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnston abstains.
Carrillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Excellent. Moving right along, we have significant common council actions. Carrie.
Common Council approved a resolution endorsing the Milwaukee Aerotropolis Development Plan. Mr. Mayor.
Oh, that was short and sweet. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to our first public hearing. We have a public hearing for a proposed sign appeal for a property at 7979 South Main Street, submitted by Scott Johnson of Bel Air Cantina. Is that you tonight, Pete?
Yep, I'll read the public hearing notice into the record. City of Oak Creek notice a public hearing before the Plan Commission. A public hearing for a sign appeal will be held Tuesday, April 25th, 2017 at 6 p.m. Oak Creek City Hall, Common Council Chambers, 8040 South 6th Street, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 53154. The appellant is Bel Air Cantina, represented by Scott Johnson. Tax key number 813-9053-000. Property is located at 7979 South Main Street. The applicant is requesting a variance from section 17.0334, part of the General Development Plan and Regulating Plan, which states that one primary sign is permitted on entry facades only, and the height of a primary sign cannot exceed 15% of the height of the Main Street retail level. If granted, the variance would allow the applicant to install one 4-foot by 11 3/8-inch primary sign on the northwest side of the pergola, which is a non-entry facade, and one 3-foot 9 1/8-inch and 3-foot 2-inch primary sign on the northeast side of the pergola, which is also a non-entry facade of the tenant space located at 410 West Town Square Way. Zoning of the property is DTS MUP-DD, Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Development District. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present. Dated the 6th day of April, 2017. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Signed Mayor Daniel J. Bukewicz, Chairman. This meeting is, this is a public hearing, and anyone who wishes to make a comment regarding the subject of this hearing, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address, and proceed to address the commission with your comments. This public hearing is now open.
Thank you, Pete. We will make 3 calls. This is the first call on item 4A. Anybody wishing to speak? Second call on the public hearing for item 4A on the sign appeal for Bel Air Cantina. Third and final call. Item 4A, Bel Air Cantina sign. Okay, we will close the public hearing and we will move on to new business, item 5A.
I could give a brief summary.
Would you please?
Sure. As I stated in the public hearing notice, they're asking a variance from the section 17.0334. Just want to show up on the screen. There's one of the signs they're proposing, but before I go into the explanation, I just want to show on the location map, on the area that is facing the northwest toward Drexel Avenue, that is where the pergola is, and one sign is going to be facing toward the inside of the parcel, and the other will be facing down 6th Street, just to give you a little bit of perspective. Here is the graphic. This is the existing pergola facing the parking lot. What they want to do is put the 3-foot 9 1/8-inch sign on brackets crossing the entryway into the outside dining. It does comply with the height clearance of minimum of 8 feet. They're proposing 9 feet. However, the height of the sign is required to have a variance as well as the size and number being on a non-entry facade. Their second sign they're looking to do, which is a non-entry facade, as I stated in the public hearing notice, is even a larger sign, and also on a non-entry, which will be attached by brackets connected by the 2 pergola posts holding up the pergola. So if these signs are internally illuminated at night, the only thing you will see illuminated is the Bel Air Cantina text. The bowl itself will remain black. There'll be a solid color, including the stitching will not be illuminated. If the Plan Commission believes that a variance should be granted, the Plan Commission can make a motion to approve granting a sign variance allowing the tenant at 410 West Town Square Way to install the following signs on a non-entry facade. one, a 3-foot and 9 1/8 inch internally illuminated primary sign on the pergola on the northeast elevation of the building, and 2, a 4-foot 11 3/8 inch by 4-foot 2 inch internally illuminated primary sign on the pergola on the northwest elevation of the building. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Pete. With that, I will open it up for questions and comments from the commission. Anybody? Chelsea?
Is the applicant here?
Could
Please
you
come up.
approach the podium, please? And we'll need your name and address for the record, please.
You might want this one.
Yeah, sure. Mike Kinsella with Poblocki Sign Company.
Okay, can you give a little more information on why you would like these two signs and why they're so large?
Well, this is John Kuhn Mitchell, so I'm project manager with the Bel Air Cantina Restaurant Group. The reason we want the signs is it's in keeping with our brand. As you can see, the sweatshirt I'm wearing, that is pretty much our. In keeping with the brand that we represent, it is representing basically the bowl is what we have in all of our restaurants. If you look at what we have on the outside of the building, on the south side, we just have a small bowl, and that says Bel Air Cantina. And so one of the main reasons we want to do this is because as you're coming off of Drexel, you really don't see our place at nighttime. And this kind of identifies it, as well as people can see as they're driving in the daytime. You can see that this is Bel Air Cantina. You can see our pergola. You can see where our outdoor seating is. So primarily the reason we want it.
So which sign would be viewable from Drexel?
The one that you're looking at right now. And it wouldn't really be viewable from Drexel. It'd be viewable from 6th Street.
Sixth
Sixth
Street.
Street.
Yeah.
Okay, Sixth Street.
So
Okay. And then Pete, can you show us where all the other signs are? Are they in close proximity?
Right now, they have one primary sign on the south elevation facing the town square. It says Bel Air Cantina with the bull logo in between Bel Air and Cantina, I believe. That's the only primary sign they have right now. That's on their one entry. Otherwise, they were granted approval for a number of eye-level signs that show the bull and their web address and all of that they have. But as of right now, the only signage they have on this area here is, I believe they have an exit on the door.
yeah,
I think that should be all they have. So they don't have any signage facing the parking lot, interior to the site, or facing 6th Street. If you look in the one graphic on the left there, you see a red, green, and blue neon sign. That was one of the signs that the Plan Commission did not approve. So
And those are gone.
that's about the only signage you see as you go down 6th Street. Otherwise, their main signage is actually facing the town square.
Thank you.
Commissioner Siebert.
Yeah, I think it's a little overkill. I could go along with one sign on 6th Street, but not the one in the parking lot. You've got a lot of signs in the area. You've got it over the entrance. You've got it on your windows. I just think 2 signs is a little too much.
Commissioner Dickman.
I agree with you. When I look at the 2 signs, I think the only one that really I feel is needed is the one that is, would be seen from 6th Street. I don't see why we would need another one on the other side. Your main sign for your main store, which faces south,
yes.
is quite large already, and people know it's there. I think this does aid, but I agree with Fred. I don't think that you need 2 signs. I would agree with the sign on the northwest.
Okay.
Commissioner Johnson.
I know that staff and the developer spent a lot of time working on this PUD language, particularly with the signage. This is not meeting those requirements. I think something that might be better off is if we did a vein sign out there. To me, this sign is too big and an entranceway.
Mm-hmm.
Think like the little cupcakes that Gigi's Cupcakes used, something like that on the side instead of a larger, big sign.
So Brian, what you'd be referring to would be like a flag sign?
Yes.
just for the commission's edification, flag signs are 3 by 3. That's the maximum size allowed for a flag sign.
Hello, anything?
No, it's very attractive. I think it works well with the area. I understand the other commissioners' comments. I too believe that one is probably a good compromise. And I think it probably should be the one that faces Sixth Street versus the parking lot. That parking lot's pretty small. You'd only reach, there's not that many people come through that way.
Right.
But this one definitely would get all the people going into their place of, their homes and stuff.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I have another question. One quick
Can
one.
I get
Oh,
Chris in
oh,
first?
yes.
Chris?
A couple things here. So you said a flag sign would be 3 by 3, Carrie? Okay. I understand the branding concept, and that's an important ingredient here for what you guys are after. And I also, both of these signs actually are serving, from my estimation, two different purposes.
Right.
One is for Sixth Street. The other is actually for the back of the parking lot to kind of
To focus people and get them directed to the right, yes.
So I would actually be somewhat comfortable with two of them if they were much smaller, though.
Commissioner Chandler?
So is there a door close to either of these signs to enter or exit?
Well, there is a large garage door underneath the pergola, as well as on to the left of the garage door, there is also an entrance door but then you're directed to go through the front entranceway.
Okay, so they can't enter
No.
this garage door?
You're not supposed to. I'm not
Okay.
saying it doesn't happen.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay, I guess I'll weigh in very quickly. It is a three-sided building for all intents and purposes, kind of a different setting building. Not much different than what we've seen at Valentine a couple days back, or a couple meetings back, excuse me. In that case, we okayed a sign, basically what we'll call the north and south side, and also a flag sign that faced east, if I remember correctly. Although I think a flag sign fits what's going on in Town Square, I don't think it would have the visual effect to draw attention to it as you're coming down Sixth Street. I do think the Sixth Street one's appropriate, although a little big. On the parking lot, I don't think you necessarily need it. You're probably coming up Sixth Street to enter that parking lot, although you can come off Main Street that way. But if you're coming in that way, most likely you pretty much know where you're going. So I think Commissioner Carrillo kind of summed it up. It'd probably be a pretty fair compromise if we went for the one off Sixth Street. Size is something else you may want to talk about. Might be a little bit big, although it fits the brand, and how they came up with this scale, not exactly sure. But it does fit square footage, doesn't it, Pete?
No, it exceeds the.
It exceeds the square footage, but makes the height.
No, the height exceeds the height as well. So it's height, size,
You're killing
number.
me. Can't
So
get
there,
it.
yeah, the height that we have maximum is 25.2 inches
Okay. And
for
and currently-
a primary for a wall sign.
And we're at 36 now?
One is 30.
38.
Let's concentrate on the Sixth Street one. I think that's where we're headed.
That's the
Number
4
two,
foot.
right?
That's the
Number
4 foot
2 on the
11.
motion.
Number 2 on the
Yeah, okay, or if we make motion.
So does anybody have an opinion regarding the Sixth Street entrance sign? Let's take that one.
The size of that one? Is that the
It's 4 foot
45?
11 inch by 4 foot 2 inch.
Can I speak to the size a little bit?
Sure. Go
So
right ahead.
you had asked a question on how that size was developed. Our designers took a look at just the overall area and the weight impact of the pergola and the building and so on and so forth, and wanted to provide them with something that would give them the necessary visual branding and effect coming off on, or coming down on Sixth Street. I understand that the size, overall dimensions of the sign exceed what's allowable square footage. Excuse me, if you were to draw a box around the sign essentially, but with their bull logo, like if you were to actually calculate the real square footage of just the bull,
Yeah.
and you have so little amount
We've been through
taken
that,
up in
but
these legs and so,
unfortunately,
yeah, not your first
How do you
rodeo.
measure it?
Yeah,
So,
you can have the letter I and really get messed up on the whole deal.
but I mean, with, and especially with the size of the actual copy Bel Air Cantina, that's driving the size of the bull, which is significantly larger. So it's really the rationale for it and having to be readable, I guess you could say.
No, I guess I will say this, the very bottom of the sign is at 9 foot. So visually, the size of that sign, I don't know how that makes an impact. It's probably eye level for you, but for a guy like me, I'm looking no, but I mean, it does make a difference on the visual of how big a sign looks, depending on the angle you're coming at. So they're probably trying to reach out as far down Sixth Street as they can possibly get. So take that into account as you're making your decisions. So, comments, Wally?
Oh, I'm all set to make a motion.
You're all set?
Yeah.
Go right ahead. Well, wait, before we do, does anybody have
Anybody else?
anything to say regarding size?
Staff has a question.
Yes.
I just want to ask whether the Plan Commission would be considering this a primary sign or a flag sign?
Consider primary.
You would be considering it a primary sign?
That's what I do.
Because if we consider it a primary sign, then what Pete has in his staff report is the primary sign maximum height based on what we have for the entire Main Street requirement. So I just want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with exceeding that maximum.
Can you refresh me as to what, we're talking about the maximum all around town square?
We're talking about the
border.
maximum per the master sign plan for the Main Street buildings. The master sign plan held that the primary wall signs for all of the Main Street buildings, well, the two that are existing, had a maximum height of 25.2 inches, as is stated in Pete's report. So if you consider it a primary sign, you're granting a variance to that standard. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
That's what the motion was going to be, that we grant variance. Okay. let's see.
Okay.
Dick will make a motion that the Plan Commission approve granting a sign variance allowing the tenant at 410 West Town Square Way to install the following sign on a non-entry facade: a 4 foot 11 inch by 11 3/8 inch by 4 foot 2 inches internally illuminated primary sign on the pergola on the northwest elevation of the building.
You have a second.
Guzekowski, I'll second.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, no.
Grillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, no.
You got it. On the
So
one.
this is just one on the northwest or
Northwest.
northwest elevation.
Correct.
And
Okay.
and the size is, they left the size as you had requested.
Right. Good luck, guys. Thank you. Moving right along, 5B. It's actually PC training. So, Carrie, do you want to take us through this?
Sure. I invited Aaron Steele from the Brick Industry Association here to give a small presentation to the Plan Commission regarding exterior building materials. This is Aaron here. And I will be going through the PowerPoint presentation. It was not included in your reports, so if you could pay attention to your screens, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of your training tonight.
Welcome.
Thank you. I sit on the Planning Commission for my home jurisdiction, so I really appreciate your time tonight. It also means I'm going to try to stay on schedule as much as possible, so you have a full agenda. If I were in your shoes, I'd like the speaker to stay on schedule. So let's see what we can do here. On that note, I'm going to be talking pretty fast to get a lot of information at you. If you'd like me to stop and focus on any particular slide or any particular issue, it's your training. So whatever you'd like me to focus on, I'll tackle, okay? A little bit about the Brick Industry Association. We're a national association of clay brick manufacturers. we are interested in communities is simply that we sell more brick in communities that have high expectations for development and construction in their communities. So that's our interest. That's why we go around an 8-state area and we provide free planning assistance, just like we're doing tonight, kind of board training, help with design standards, architectural standards, design guidelines, that sort of thing. That's just a little bit about us. And if you're wondering if that makes us biased, absolutely, it makes us biased. So take that in consideration, but I hope that I'm going to give you some just pretty straight up information about materials tonight that you can use. We found as we travel around the Midwest that there's actually a great need for this, that we have communities that are regulating, guiding, incentivizing particular materials without really even understanding the full palette of materials that are out there and the characteristics of each. So that's just what I want to touch on tonight if I could. So the slide you're seeing there is, this is how we used to build. For centuries, we built by stacking heavy things on top of other heavy things. Very durable, very long lasting, as you see in those images. Those are historic buildings, historic structures. They've lasted for centuries. If you could, thank you. This is how we build now, for better or worse. We build a structural skeleton for a building, and then we wrap it with something. We put some facade around the outside, even with brick. For the most part, we have a structural component to the building that holds up the roof, and then we put a facade around it. So if you go to the next, that'd be great. That is the case most of the time. However, we still sometimes do brick construction in a way that actually holds up the ceiling, actually holds up the roof, load-bearing walls. And so that's what you see on the left hand of your screen there. But I'm going to talk about a couple of construction techniques tonight that are kind of important to understanding how facade materials work. It's not just the facade material, it's also the components that are behind it and how they're put together. And so on the right there, you see brick in a veneer type application. We call it a cavity wall system, where we use that concrete block there that's in the rear, sometimes wood studs, sometimes metal studs, to actually hold up the roof. And then we put the facade, we leave a space, and then we put the facade up over it. The space is kind of important. I'll touch on that in just a second. So one more picture here of load-bearing masonry. This is rare these days, but it does still happen. And if you are looking for a really interesting website to peruse, I would recommend hopeforarchitecture.com. This is an architect out of the southeast United States that is building what he calls multi-century homes, a return to buildings that will last as long as they're loved, he says. And so he is still doing load-bearing structural brick homes, but it is rare. Two concepts I want to talk to you about before I actually start looking at individual materials. These are construction techniques that are kind of important to understanding how the materials are actually used and how they're different from one another. So anchored versus adhered. Anchored facade materials are those that are built up from the foundation. They actually have a foundational support, and the materials are laid up from there or weighted on the foundation. So the brick construction that I just showed you, the cavity wall construction, is an anchored system. A lot of materials, however, are adhered systems, meaning they are stuck to the wall, either with fasteners or actual adhesive. Okay, that's kind of important. And one of the themes I'm going to hit on tonight is that it's not just the material that's on the outside, it's also how the whole wall system works together and how that material is applied to the wall itself. One other important consideration is whether a material is applied in a barrier versus or a drainage wall type of system. So in a barrier system, we apply that facade material to the wall and we do everything we can to keep water out. It's a barrier to water and moisture. Tricky part is that there's no material, even brick, that is a 100% fail-safe barrier system, barrier wall. And so you can choose to try to seal out moisture, or you can choose to try to deal with it if and when it penetrates. So the diagram on the left is a barrier wall. Diagram on the right is a drainage wall. Again, in this example is brick. That cavity we talked about between the structural component of the building and the facade component of the building is where water is channeled back out if and when it penetrates the facade material. So as I talk about all these various materials tonight, I'm going to keep hitting on whether they are barrier or drainage, anchored or adhered. Okay. So these are the ones we're going to talk about. You notice that I've struck some. I'll spend more time on those if you'd like, but just for the sake of time, I think we're going to either spend less time on those or skip right past them. And if you look over to the right there, we're going to talk about them in terms of, we're going to define them, we're going to talk about their advantages and disadvantages, the degree of sustainability that material offers, its cost, longevity, durability, and authenticity. Longevity and durability seem like the same thing. Longevity is how long that material looks like it looks the day it was applied. Durability is how long it is how well it resists wear and impact and that sort of thing, and does its job over the long term. So real quick on vinyl siding. I think we all know what vinyl siding is. Its primary component is PVC. It's petroleum derived. Comes in a variety of colors and shapes. The material has its color built into it. It's integral to the material. Comes in a variety of thicknesses. It is, picture those diagrams in your mind again, an adhered barrier system. So it is applied directly to the wall, and it attempts to keep moisture out. So there you see a diagram of how vinyl is applied. It's a fairly simple installation. We have the structural wall. We have plywood sheathing typically. We have some sort of home wrap or water-resistant barrier, and then we apply the vinyl siding directly to it. So some advantages of vinyl: it's a very low initial investment, low maintenance for the time that it is up and functioning, easy installation. Some disadvantages, though, is aesthetically it attempts to mimic lap wood siding, and the degree to which it's successful at that, people might disagree about. There are some environmental concerns, again, because it's made from petroleum primarily, or derived from petroleum. Also, its durability and longevity are somewhat low. So if we have to replace that material in 20 years or 15 years, we are reinvesting in the environmental cost of that product again after a relatively short life cycle. It is flammable, can dent and crack and melt. The degree to which it adds value to homes in Oak Creek is, in question compared to other materials, and already hit on the life cycle. So you can see at the bottom of this, these are the slides that will be the least objective for me tonight as a representative of the brick industry. And so those red dots are just on a relative scale where they fall on each of those categories. And vinyl, though it has some significant advantages, falls relatively low on that scale in all categories. Fiber cement is an interesting product. It's made from a mixture of wood pulp, sand, and cement. So the common name brand for this is, anyone? The name brand we all know? Hardy? Yep, very good. Often used as a wood or vinyl substitute, but it can be made in a variety of shapes and textures. And so one thing that we're seeing as a trend, and it's apparent right here in this neighborhood, is a move toward more ambiguous, large tile-like products that are not intended necessarily to imitate anything. And so those are becoming relatively popular all across the United States. Typically manufactured without color, has to be painted either at the factory or after installation. Often comes primed to the job site. A trend toward highly finished cementitious panels, and it is an adhered barrier system. Fiber cement is applied much like vinyl siding, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. We can go on to the next one. So advantages of fiber cement board: it has a 30-plus year warranty. It looks like wood or is a fair imitation of wood. It holds paint very well. You can get some fantastic colors on fiber cement, some very vibrant colors. No foundation support is needed, again, because it's an adhered system. However, it's heavier and harder to install than vinyl. You will have seams because you can't make these boards an infinite length, and those seams require special care, maintenance-wise. and it does need repainting. So on a cycle of perhaps 7 to 10 years. If you could back up 1 second, that'd be great. So one thing I'd like to point out here is our sustainability is middle of the road on fiber cement board, and that's partly because it's made of a cement product, it has cement product in it, and Portland cement, which is used in all concrete or cement products, is energy intensive to produce and manufacture. So anything that has Portland cement in it is not going to rise very high on this scale sustainability wise. Cost wise, it is roughly in the middle of the road. It's a good product durability and longevity wise. It starts to rise up to the right there on our scale. Authenticity, though, it typically tries to mimic something else, whether it's mimicking brick or shakes or wood siding. Simply because of that mimicry, it can't be authentic. Keep in mind, however, the mention about this move toward somewhat ambiguous panels. They are what they are, and if you like how they look, you like how they look. And so in that case, authenticity is not so much of an issue. All right, EIFS or EIFS, exterior insulation and finish systems. Shortly, it is synthetic stucco. So anybody know the typical, what's the most common brand name for this? Dryvit, ever heard of Dryvit? So that's often how we refer to it, but that is just a brand name. It is exterior sheathing, rigid foam insulation board with acrylic pushed into mesh over that foam insulation board. Originally a barrier wall, trying to keep moisture out, but it did have some mold and moisture problems, and so the industry has developed a water-managed version that has a little bit of an air gap, a little bit like a cavity wall and a brick wall. And it is an adhered barrier system unless it uses that water-managed version. So here you can see a picture of it being applied. Everything that's gray is a water-resistive barrier, and everything that's white is the foam insulation board being adhered to the wall. And here it is going up on a hotel. I like these next couple of pictures because it shows every stage in the process. We have the tan color, which is just the plywood substrate. We have the yellow, which is the water-resistant barrier, and we have the white foam insulation board going on. And if you go to the next slide, you can see the initial troweling of the acrylic coating over the top of the insulation board. I would just point out that this needs to be, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on stucco, but this needs to be differentiated from stucco. Stucco has been used for thousands of years, quite durable, but it is a cementitious product troweled over the wall, not a foam board with acrylic. So advantages of EIFS, it can be shaped and designed in all sorts of angles and details and different shapes, so that's certainly an advantage. It's a lightweight finish. It is energy efficient because in essence, you're surrounding the building with insulation board, a thick layer of insulation. However, moisture intrusion can be an issue, combustibility can be an issue, easily damaged. You see in this picture here right on the corner. Sometimes that design flexibility actually gets us into trouble with EIFS because we try to do things, easily damaged details down at sidewalk level, like this one, and those are just magnets for damage. And the cost is affected by the wall system. So that water managed version is significantly more expensive than the traditional EIFS. Sustainability, middle of the road, largely because of its energy savings, because it is very efficient. Cost is middle of the road. Longevity and durability, though, are an issue, and it does mimic traditional stucco. So it's never going to be authentic in those terms. Manufactured stone. So much of what we have come to know as stone over the last 15 years is actually not stone. It's a concrete imitation of stone. It's concrete that is molded and textured and colored to look like stone. It is cast in molds dyed with pigments, typically up to 3 inches thick, adhered to the wall over a scratch coat of mortar. It is a barrier wall construction. often referred to by the brand names Cultured Stone, Eldorado Stone, Coronado Stone. So one rule that I encourage people to think about is if you have to say anything plus stone, it's not natural stone. And it is an adhered barrier system also. Here it is being applied. So in essence, you can see there in the upper right-hand picture, we have a mortar layer, and then we come and we press the thin artificial stone into that mortar layer. And then we go back through with basically a big cake decorating bag and squirt the mortar in between the seams to fill them. Some advantages of masonry stone or of manufactured stone. It does look like a manufactured application if done well. Design flexibility is pretty good because we can cut this stuff. And it comes in a variety of shapes and even 90-degree pieces you saw in the last picture to make corners. Pretty easy installation. Some disadvantages are water management. Water intrusion can be an issue with this product. Precision installation, meaning these are manufactured pieces of imitation stone. They're not natural. So they don't have that randomness to it, that right out of the ground kind of true authentic look to it. So if you look close at manufactured stone, you will see patterns in those stones repeating. And so it can look a little too precise on the wall. Fading can be an issue because we use a pigment in the product, and authenticity certainly because it's an imitation of natural stone. Also, another issue with manufactured stone is it is supposed to be installed an inch above the surface, the ground surface. So you'll see in that picture there of that low wall that you kind of get a hovering stone kind of look. And traditionally, since stone is heavy, it's supposed to appear to be supported by the ground. Sustainability can only rise to middle of the road because of the Portland cement issue. Cost is relatively high. Longevity and durability are middle of the road, and we already talked about authenticity. I'm going to speed along a little bit faster here. Concrete masonry veneer is basically concrete block that is textured, colored, and sometimes given a particular size or shape to imitate, in this case, brick. Installed a lot like brick in a cavity wall. Good design flexibility. It's durable, it's weighty, it's heavy, it lasts a long time. But fading can be a problem because it does have a pigment in it. It requires a large number of control joints, which can interfere with the aesthetic of the wall sometimes. And that same precision issue applies, that because we're manufacturing them, we can only make so many different versions of that block. And so if you look at a wall with concrete masonry veneer, eventually you'll see how they repeat. Again, Portland cement, so sustainability is an issue, and it typically tries to imitate something else, so authenticity can be an issue, but on all of the other measures, it's a pretty decent product. I'd like to fast forward past this one if you don't mind, and that one, please. We can come back to those if we have questions. So brick, this is of course where I go into promotion mode just a little bit, but a solid masonry unit of clay or shale fired in a kiln. This is what makes brick different from even the other masonry products that we talked about, is that the color of the brick comes from the material that's used to make it and the chemical reactions, the chemical processes that occur when it's being fired in a kiln at a very high temperature. So the color you see today is the color you're going to see, as long as it's clean, in 150, 200 years. Comes in hundreds of shapes and colors, not just red, and finishes. And it is an anchor drainage system, just like many of the other masonry products we talked about. There you see a diagram again of that cavity wall. Again, our goal is to manage water, not assume that we can keep it out. That's a big advantage of most anchored systems. It's built up from the foundation, and we build in a water management system rather than hoping we can keep it from penetrating. Brick is locally available, proven performance. I mean, all you have to do is look around to see brick buildings that look fantastic today that are nearing 200 years old. Brick actually has a pretty low R value. So if we measure insulative value by the R value, it's actually not great. But because a brick wall is so massive, it has this effect that's provided by the thermal mass, where we can knock off the peaks of the heating and cooling cycle because of how slow the heat and cold transfer is through a massive wall. It is sustainable. It's taken from the earth. It's made of a plentiful material. It is a heavy product, so it takes more energy to ship. It's fired in a kiln, so it takes energy to make it. But where brick gets its great sustainability is from its long life cycle. We can build a brick building to last 200 years or more if we want to do it. Okay, so if you go one more slide, that'd be great. I want to talk just a little bit about trends, because this is the stuff if you're not already seeing it, you're going to be seeing it. So I think this is the stuff you might find it particularly helpful. There's a trend toward thin products, with the exception of vinyl siding, which is making thicker versions to be more durable. But every product out there is trying to make a thin version of itself, including brick. So we have thin brick, thin natural stone has become quite popular, thin tile-like products. Whenever you're working with a thin product, it's generally implying an adhered barrier system. Even with brick, we lose that cavity drainage wall. And it's motivated largely by economics and to some extent by energy codes. Along with those thin systems come proprietary installation systems. So that makes your job harder, because you're going to see materials proposed where the material is not the only issue. It's also what's the system that's being used to install it. And oftentimes, one manufacturer is going to use this system that is proprietary to their company, and another installer will use another. So there's no universal installation methods for some of these products. So that can be a challenge as well. And the last trend I want to hit on here is, and one of my pet peeves, is the term architectural. You have probably heard a lot of developers and builders tell you that the product they're going to be installing is an architectural version of the product. Very common with concrete panels and metal panels in particular. And architectural is supposed to imply that it's made to a higher level, higher degree of finish, no exposed fasteners. Those are things that we often assume when we hear the term architectural, but it's often presented like it is an industry standard, like there is an industry-wide definition that everyone in that industry must manufacture to in order to use the term architectural, and that's not true. It's just an internal categorization for each company. So what they choose to call architectural is just what they choose to call architectural. And so here you see a picture of a posh Mercedes-Benz dealership with what are certainly architectural metal panels, but with ribs and exposed fasteners. And those are often the things we assume architectural panels not to have. So it also, that term doesn't address aesthetics or durability. It shouldn't be a shortcut for writing a policy to put into your city codes or to put into your zoning code or your PUD standards. It doesn't have a lot of meaning. Okay, and my last slide, if you hit that one more time, that'd be great. So if you are charged with actually writing some of this stuff down, you want to write this down in policy to get the materials you really want, here are some things that I'd recommend. I'd recommend that you regulate materials to lower the odds of a poor design. You can have 100% brick buildings in your community, and there's no guarantee they're going to be great designs. But it drastically improves the odds that it will be a great design to begin with, and that will continue to look great over the years. Require submittal of material samples with application. Staff, do you require that now? Yep. Do you have offices full of samples? We do. Yep. Great. I'd also recommend that if you're writing policy that you don't use brand names, especially if you're using those brand names as a standard that you want others to reach, because the quality of that brand can ebb and flow over the years all the time. So we certainly don't want to hold up any one brand as the standard that everyone should aspire to. Consider the installation methods, not just the material itself. Consider how the material will stand up to water impacts and hold color. prohibit imitations in neighborhoods where authenticity is important. So you might allow thin brick in a new neighborhood that's being developed newly for the first time, but thin brick won't fly perhaps in a neighborhood that has a lot of charm or historic character. Even if you wouldn't call it a historic district, the authenticity is probably important to the charm of that neighborhood. So definitely you'd want to require the authentic version of that material in those cases. Challenge developers when they misrepresent proposed materials. There's a lot of imitations of other things, so we want to know exactly what they are. If a concrete brick is okay with Oak Creek, wonderful. Just make sure you know that what's being proposed is what you're actually getting. And certainly the bar for quality materials and design should be higher when grants or tax incentives or some other financial incentive from the city is involved. We definitely recommend having a set of standards with higher expectations in those cases when you're going to be subsidizing development in some way. So that's my presentation, and I'd be happy, I'll stay as long as you like, as long as you have questions. So what questions can I answer for you?
Before we take questions here, I think, Arden, you had a question on this item? I think you did.
Thank you, Mayor. Arden Degner, 8540 South Pennsylvania Avenue. I have a land and stone manufactured brick home. The problem I have is it's 50 years old, trying to tuck point this material because the diamond wheels are not available for homeowners. How do you handle tuck pointing in homes? And what is your guidelines?
This is for a clay brick building or a?
Land and stone.
Okay. Yeah, I'm afraid I can't offer a lot of technical assistance on a product, outside the clay brick industry. But I have a card for you if you'd like to talk more about the possibilities.
Commissioner Dickman.
I guess this is a question for our planning department as well as you. You said in here that the trend is toward thinner material, yet we've recently been always adding in, we need 4-inch for brick. Are we looking at maybe changing our standard based on what you've presented, or?
Well, part of the reason that we invited Aaron here is to kind of address some of the issues that we've been seeing in our application. So currently, our code requires a 4-inch stone or a 4-inch brick veneer, if that is to be proposed. So I guess the question is that 4-inch requirement a standard? And is there any difference to using something that is not a 4-inch standard?
Well, again, we keep that standard to try to keep the quality up where we need it. If you remember, we had a particular building come in here and they misbuilt the footing and the brick width had to be reduced. And we had to come in here for a variance. We're trying to avoid those things. As he said in one of the slides, thin is in these days. It's in for a reason. They can take that 4-inch brick and slice it in 4 pieces and get 4 pieces out of it. Economically, manufacture, everybody goes farther with it, but you may not get the quality that we're necessarily looking for. Again, when we build structures, we want them to last as long as possible and look as good as possible, which is really part of the reason for this whole presentation, to better understand the systems that we deal with pretty regularly around here.
Can I address that just real briefly?
Sure.
So I think that when I hear that you require a 4-inch brick, what I see that boiling down to is, do we want a cavity wall system or do we want an adhered system for brick? Because when you require a full bed depth brick, which 4-inch would be, it's almost certainly going to be laid up from the footing and with a cavity wall behind it if it's built to code and to our industry standards. So to me, that's the bigger issue. I have to tread carefully because all of my member manufacturers also make thin brick. But if you got them in the back room, they'd all say they would rather see you put up a cavity wall laid up from the foundation in the traditional sense. 4-inch seems a little bit arbitrary. There are some industry standards, as to what a full bed depth brick must be. And if you're talking the difference between 2 3/4 inches and 4 inches, you've got a lot of mass there either way. I think the big issue is the wall system that is used to apply it.
Wally again?
Oh, that's fine.
No.
Thank
Anybody?
Thanks for coming.
I was just going to say thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Gives a little better insight of what actually goes into building materials.
My pleasure. Thanks for your attention. I do have some manuals here
Be
that you
awesome.
might find useful.
I-
I'll just
I
leave
have
them with Carrie.
Oh, one more.
Yes. So with the thicker brick, wouldn't that be better to use for safety purposes if you were to have a fire, because it can better contain what's going on in the property versus allowing it to come out using the thick brick versus thinner?
Sure. Of course, the thicker you go, the better, and the more massive you go, the better your fire resistance is going to be. You have building codes here in Oak Creek that require a certain fire resistance anyway, whether it's met with layers of plywood and drywall and that sort of thing. So when you say we want let's say full bed depth brick, what you're saying is we want the facade material itself to offer extra fire resistance over what's required by building code. And maybe that's important in a place where buildings are close together. Maybe it's really important at sidewalk level where there's, potential for impacts, where there's shoppers on the other side of those walls in the case of windblown debris. But again, the difference between 2 3/4 inches and 3 inches and 4, you got to draw the line somewhere. And we have some industry standards that might help with that.
So with the thinner brick, what is recommended to assist with the barrier?
What is recommended to what?
To assist with the barrier for safety purposes.
So certainly you have a reduced safety margin with thin brick because it's only about 3/4 of an inch thick. And so and it's adhered to the wall, not built up from the foundation. So it's certainly, you are sacrificing something in durability and safety when you go to thin brick. Certainly.
You also said there's a certain installation system, proprietary installation. Is that specific for the thin brick?
Even within the brick industry, different brick manufacturers have developed their own installation systems. So you saw a picture of a metal grid that's screwed to the wall with little tabs, and then the thin brick are laid on that. But again, that's just one company using that system. Other manufacturers recommend another system. Whereas the traditional cavity wall that I showed you all through, where it's laid up from the foundation, has a space in between, that's a universal type of installation that is reflecting it in the building code and is recommended and supported by the industry as a whole. So that's a challenge with any new material, really, is that all that sort of stuff is getting sorted out yet over time as to what the industry standard should be.
So is there an industry standard for the thinner brick?
There's not an industry standard for thin brick installations. There are industry standards for the units themselves, the brick units themselves, but not for installations.
When you say the unit themselves, what does that mean? The brick itself, the thin brick?
Right, the clay thin brick, yep. How thick it should be and, firing temperatures and absorptive rates and all that sort of really technical stuff.
How is that different than the industry standards for the thicker brick?
Typically, most of the standards are the same, but the dimensions and thicknesses and the degree to which they can vary from one unit to the next, those are a little bit different for thin brick than they are for full size brick.
Thank you.
You bet.
Right. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Very educational.
Thank you.
Again, hope everybody learned something through that. Again, some of the most iconic buildings in the city of Milwaukee and the country itself are made of brick, very durable, last hundreds of years. It's beautiful when done correctly. And again, as he said, full brick is load bearing versus what we have. So credit to our planning department for laying these specs out that we don't have to quite figure everything out up here. So with that, we will move on to item 5C, conditions and restrictions for a conditional use permit submitted by Mark White, the Ridge Community Church. Who's got this one? Carrie.
So if you'll recall, at the last meeting, Plan Commission recommended that the property at 6912 and its remnant property, which is actually right behind it to the east, be granted a conditional use permit for the operation of a church, a religious institution in the existing Value Cinema building. I should note that there is an error in the staff report. It says that the project is rezone and conditional use. That is incorrect. It's actually conditions and restrictions, so we are on the right report. The conditions and restrictions that we are going to be discussing tonight are specific to the church, as it is a conditional use requirement for the RRO, or Regional Retail Overlay District, along 27th Street. So if you will turn to page 2 of 7 under 3A, the parking, loading, and access requirements. Parking for this project shall utilize the existing parking stalls as was proposed. Any changes shall require Plan Commission review and be provided in accordance with sections 170329, 170330, and 170403. The number of parking stalls shall be in accordance with section 170403 sub J6A. So that's taking into consideration the fact that they're going to be using the existing parking. It's looking at the overlay district requirements as well as the underlying zoning code requirements. So this is really more for if they expand the parking or if they change it. Under G, all new or reconfigured off-street parking areas shall be landscaped in accordance with code. That's if anything changes or expands, and that's for any kind of, that would be for any parking in the city. If you could turn to page 3 of 7 under 4, lighting, plans for new outdoor lighting shall be reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission and electrical inspector. That's basically, again, if they're going to do any kind of change to the exterior, to the parking lot, or expand. 5A, landscaping modifications shall be in accordance with code. Again, if there are any changes to the site. We turn to page 5 of 7 under 6A for architectural standards. All new or modified structures shall meet the requirements of sections 170329 and 170330. These are the overlay district standards, as well as section 171009, which is the regular code requirements for architectural standards. Under E, the Plan Commission may modify any of the above building design standards by a 3/4 vote of members in attendance, but only if supplemental design elements or improvements are incorporated into the project over and above those which are otherwise required, etc. This is the brand new modification standard that was approved for the overlay district code, you will recall. Page 6 of 7, building and parking setbacks under 7. This is basically establishing the parking and building setbacks per code. There are some requirements in the overlay districts which require additional setbacks. So these take everything into consideration. This is really, again, for if the parking lot were to be expanded, changed, or if the building itself were to be expanded, or there would be new buildings constructed. Under 8C, the regular hours of operation between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and between the hours of 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. Sunday. You'll recall that they had provided some information with some different hours. This is giving them a little bit more flexibility, understanding and recognizing that they are in a retail district, treating them much in the same way as a retail operator would be in that area. Should they choose to amend these hours, if they request the Plan Commission to consider other hours tonight, that's up for the Plan Commission to review. These are just for discussion purposes. Under 9, signs, all signs shall conform to the provisions of code for the overlay district as well as for the regular code. And 10, permitted uses, all permitted uses in the I-1 institutional zoning district, all permitted uses in the RRO, regional retail overlay district, and 1 religious institution, which is the subject of this conditional use permit. So the staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions as part of the conditional use permit for a religious institution at 6912 and 6912R South 27th Street. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Carrie. With that, I do not have any slips on speakers, so I'll open it up for comments and questions from the commission. Anybody? Commissioner Dickman.
to be a little bit picky, Kerry, only on under permitted uses, number 10C, one religious institution, how we define it. Example, say that they decided to add a building on to have a little religious school, that they wanted, as part of theirs. Would that still fit in that category
Yes, because it's an institution, a religious use of the property.
of the property? Okay.
It's a category in the zoning code. It doesn't prohibit them from building additional buildings. That would come before the plan commission. It's much the same way that we say facility. So facility and institution to me are kind of the same. If you have multiple buildings as part of your facility, that doesn't mean that you have multiple facilities on your property.
Brian, Dawn? About
Yeah,
this
I
one.
just have one
Fred?
question. Has the new owners been aware of the potential road that's going to come in on the south of them and that may cross part of their property if you look on the west of that narrow strip?
Well, that proposed road, that officially mapped street pattern has been on our map for many, many years. I
Don't know.
can't speak specifically to whether or not they were aware that this mapped road pattern crosses that property in that location. They would definitely be made aware if at such time those discussions regarding the construction of the road or even a potential change to the design of the road would occur. So in short answer, I don't know. But again, they would be part of the discussion if that road were to be installed.
I know we're making changes in that area, and I just thought it'd be interesting to them to be aware that there's a potential road in the future that could come across their property.
We do have one speaker. Mr. Ed Lisowski. 6988 South 27th Street. Go ahead,
That's
Ed.
correct,
Nice
yeah,
to see
thank
you
you.
again.
Thank you. A resident over 60 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, before we were a city.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember those days.
We're just about, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I got a question two questions. Number one is the drainage. What about the drainage? Has the drainage been in consideration for this?
I'm going to let our resident engineer take that one.
They're not looking at changing anything from what is out there existing, so there's no requirements to change any of the drainage from what's there.
Really? You sure with all that you're putting up?
They're not changing
They're
anything.
not changing it.
They're just
Parking
taking
lot's staying
over
the
the
same,
theater,
building's
Ed.
staying the
Yeah.
same.
Okay, but the parking and everything, geez.
No, the
Parking and everything.
the parking remains the same.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the drainage. Because my property is a little lower right there.
I understand.
And it comes right over the snow, plowing, and melts. Comes right on my property.
Essentially,
Floods
it's
me out.
new homeowners, they're moving in and people are moving out. They're not making any changes to the parking lot or building. That's it's existing. So you have a problem right now with drainage coming from the property to the west of you, is it, or south, or
North of me.
North of you, I should say.
Well, yeah, it's higher.
Right, but nothing is changing at all. And
Well,
it was pre-engineered when it was Marcus Theater at the time, and it must have met the drainage plan when they put that in. So it's remaining that way. Until they change the entire structure or add parking lot, would we relook at that? Am I correct in
Gotta
that?
come back here.
Correct.
could you repeat that again? What'd you say?
Until they alter the structure of the building or the parking lot in some way, shape, or form, we wouldn't look at the drainage plan because they're just taking that home as is. It would be no different than if you sold your home to somebody, they would take it as is, and then if they modified the structure or the land, then we'd relook. But because they're not doing that, they're just taking it as is.
But they're gonna plow more because they're gonna use the parking lot more. So they're gonna, that snow, I've seen it. They pile it up on the edge there. And that melts and
I can't argue with you if they're going to plow more or less. It is a fact they are going to plow, but the only thing that they will have in common is they'll plow the same area. Does that make any sense?
Well, sort of, I guess. Yeah. The
You
other
know, they're
thing
not
is,
plowing any more area and creating
Yeah.
more piles. So,
the other thing is I got a more sensitive question.
okay.
Is this tax exempt property?
Is this tax exempt property? Currently, it is not tax
Yeah,
exempt
that's what I
property.
thought. Yeah.
It becoming a church is absolutely great question. I would imagine
Didn't they make an
it's-
application yet?
I would imagine they did, quite frankly. Pete, Carrie, any answer to that?
That would be a question for the finance department and the assessor's office. That's not anything that our department has anything to do with, unfortunately.
Somebody has to have that.
Right, so it would be finance or the assessor's office
Right.
that you would want to talk to about that.
Unfortunately, we can't answer that here.
When can we answer that?
We can have an answer for you if you want to call in tomorrow, or if you do go by computer, we can get that answer for you tomorrow.
Mr. Mayor, perhaps a better place for that discussion might be at the council hearing?
Oh, yeah, and we could have that also in a week, probably. Will they hit the agenda in a week or 2 weeks?
No, there's notice requirements that we have to
Oh,
fulfill, so
thank
no,
you.
it wouldn't be in a week.
Thank you. It will come before council, Ed.
When?
Probably the May 17th meeting,
I'd have to check.
somewhere in there.
May?
We can call and let you know
Yeah.
when it's going to be
Please let
on.
me know.
You bet. I'll get your name and number after the meeting, and I'll
Okay.
let you know when it's going to be on the agenda.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay?
You're welcome.
Okay?
You're welcome, and we'll have that answer for you.
Okay.
Again,
Probably tax exempt, though, hey?
possibly, yes. It would not surprise me at all, but again, they did, choose to come to Oak Creek, and they worked out a deal with the existing property owner and went through the
Which is
proper
taxed.
procedures. Which is currently taxed, correct, as a business.
Okay.
I don't make the rules on taxation.
Yeah, okay, okay. You're just the mayor.
Yeah.
Okay, I got the answer. I got the answer. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, pretty much. But
Everybody tells you what to do.
including my wife. I'm totally comfortable in the role.
I can't answer that one. Okay.
Okay, thanks for coming in, Ed. Anyone else? Wally?
I'd like to hear from the church if they're satisfied with with the conditions and restrictions. Somebody should mention that. Do they have some problems with them or not?
Mark White, lead pastor of the church. Yes, we are. We've looked through them and we are comfortable. Mhm. We are.
Anything else from the commissioners?
We are aware of the street as well. Doug talked to us about that as we
You are.
were going through the.
Okay.
But yeah.
And again, the street,
Potential, but not.
was a
real.
potential. Didn't work out the last time through. There were multiple reasons, but it is something that would be desirable at some point in time if affordable. Thank you. Okay. Entertain a motion.
Dick will make a motion that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restrictions for a religious institution at 6912 and 6912R South 27th Street.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seipert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Great. Moving right along, we will go down to 5D. It is a rezone conditional use permit submitted by Kelly Gallagher for Self Storage Ventures LLC. Rezone the property at 275 East Drexel Avenue. Carrie.
This is a request to rezone the property from B2 to LM1 for a self-service storage facility. This is the property that is outlined in red on the screen. So to orient you a little bit, this is just south of Drexel Avenue and just east of the Drexel and Howell intersection there, behind the existing Wendy's Chase Bank. There we go. This is a concept rendering or a concept plan for the proposal. It includes one 52,000 square foot, 2-story, climate-controlled building with a small office in the southwest corner. They're anticipating about 2 employees to be in that office. And there is also an interior loading bay located in the center part of this building A, so right about here on the screen. So let me try and highlight that a little bit for you. There are also 5 other non-climate controlled, more traditional type buildings that are proposed south of Building A, which is the large building. These are single-story buildings. No outdoor storage has been proposed, and it is not allowed in the LM1 zoning district. Code requires compliance with all architectural standards that are the standards in section 171009. So in other words, the typical standards for building that we require. Overhead and storage bay doors per code may not face the abutting residential properties. There are abutting residential properties to the east here, or residential district lines. This is the residential district line as well. So the loading bay doors would be facing interior to the property. 30-foot setback to residential district lines is in addition to buffer requirements. Again, that's on the east side. Customer access is proposed to be Monday through Sunday from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. They are anticipating a maximum of about 8 to 12 customers per day. Access will be via the gate with an electronic keypad. The gate is over here on the west side off that internal private road. There will be fencing between the buildings, particularly buildings A and E, and between these buildings, which are E and F, and then between buildings B and F. Security will be via CCTV and camera audio monitoring system, basically the same kind of security measures that were proposed at the College and Howell location. Parking will be near the gate, which is up here again by the office area, and also in front of the units that are the 1-story externally accessed units. Per code, the parking requirements for the interior accessed storage units would be needed in order to determine compliance with the parking requirements. We don't know the layout of Building A yet, so it's a little bit difficult to make that determination as to whether or not the parking proposed is adequate. However, staff's recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the property at 275 East Drexel Avenue be rezoned from B2 Community Business to LM1 Light Manufacturing with a conditional use permit for a self-service storage facility after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Commission at the next meeting, which is May 9th. Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, Carrie. And I know the applicant is here if they'd like to get up and say a few things. We have some speakers that can follow, but maybe you'll answer some questions along the way for them. So if you'd like to, please approach bench. And I think you've been here before, Mr. Gallagher, so name and address.
Kelly Gallagher, 3114 East Hunters Ridge Way, Heber City, Utah. And good to be before you again. I know we're talking about 275 East Drexel, but just as a quick update, I close on the land on College and Howell on Tuesday. And then hopefully we'll be submitting our building plans to the department here for review within a month. So we're excited about the progress there. We have had a lot of excitement about this project. And as the audience can see, and hopefully you all as well, that's the appearance that we're going to be having off of Drexel. We were fortunate enough to send out 42 invitations to the neighborhood to come and attend a meeting with me on Thursday, I think, last week. And both 9 to 11 in the morning and 5 to 7 at night here in this room. We were fortunate to have 5 people attend in the morning and 3 in the evening. and most of them had the exact same set of concerns. One was lighting, the other was the trash that blows through this area heading towards the residential side, and then concerns on security and access as well as traffic. I think that I can say, without putting words in all of their mouths, that after my explanation and presentation to them, they were more comfortable with our development and felt that, number one, it was good to have something there because it's quite an eyesore and is quite dangerous at present constituted. And in the presentation that we made with the landscape, which is what you see along the left-hand side of that picture, that's what will be facing the residential side. So there's been some requests for the type of trees that might be planted there, which we're more than happy to accommodate. In addition to that, all of our lighting schematics were presented and shown. So they all are wall pack units, but they face directly down. They do not face out. And there will be no doors on the exterior buildings. As Carrie pointed out, there will be no doors showing on the exterior at all, and no light or wall packs on those buildings on the exterior either. So I think with that, hopefully we accommodated most of everyone's concerns. And actually some of those individuals are here tonight, so I'm sure we'll hear from them. And let me see if Brian has anything to add.
Just briefly, thank you. Attorney Brian Randall, Freebert Finnerty and St. John, 330 East Kilbourne Avenue. Kerry was going to put up the second rendering that Kelly also presented to the neighbors last week, but we know there are some new neighbors here tonight that weren't there. This is a little bit more from the side angle that shows the single-story buildings, the single-story building as you go south on the site, and again, our superimposed landscaping with just the very first rendering. These are conceptual schematics, and as we know, and as you know, as we go toward conditions and restrictions and then final site and building plan, we'll have much more precision and many more details, and we've heard the desire by some of the neighbors to have more evergreens and more dense trees in that area, and we'd be able to accommodate that. So that's just another visual as you kind of turn the site from the neighbor's side. The only other two things I wanted to mention is bridging off of the last speaker's comment on the last item, this will be a fully taxable site, and it's a vacant land site right now, so Kelly's putting a lot of money into it. And secondly, we're very pleased to be what I think is the first LM1 potential zoning use. I know the Plan Commission and staff before that spent a lot of time studying the possibility of that district and where some flexibility opportunities might be. And we're very pleased to potentially be the first rezoned property that can then be one of the LM1 zoning districts. So we'll be happy to answer questions, but certainly we can listen to what the neighbors and other interested parties have to say, and the commission as well. We can answer those questions at any time.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Randall. With that, we'll call up first speaker, Mr. Arden Dagner.
Arden Degner, 8540 South Pennsylvania Avenue. I have a couple of questions. In that this is being located just east of the Wendy's and the bank, will there be, what kind of signage, what kind of traffic will there be? Apparently, they're going to have an access to that same drive that Wendy's have? Is that correct?
No, there's a private development road that's actually behind Wendy's, so to the east of Wendy's. That's their existing private access road.
You know, they show an access drive on their plan just west of the development, and it's shown in light blue there.
No, that's actually an existing drainage easement that they're proposing to landscape.
So I'm going further south from the drainage easement. The next light blue area.
That's an existing stormwater detention facility.
With a gate in it?
No, that's showing the easement. That stormwater detention facility actually serves multiple properties in that area, and what they're showing as a dotted line is actually the easement continuing down for access to those other properties. So all those properties would have access to that detention pond for maintenance purposes. This is existing.
Well, it's a little confusing on this drawing then, because I would expect that they would have an entrance and an exit for this, because what you're saying then, the only entrance will be from Drexel Avenue then?
There's an existing access road that they would be using. So
That's
this-
what I was
yeah.
trying to determine.
Yep, that's what this is. That's what they'll be using. There's
So-
no new curb cut that's being proposed.
So where will the signage be located? Will this be a glaring sign there on Drexel Avenue?
Yeah, signage actually hasn't been designed yet, and that would come at the site plan review, which would be after this process.
Because to me, a glaring sign on Drexel Avenue, it's always nice to approach that corner of Drexel and Howell when you have a Wendy's with a muted sign and then the bank adjacent to it. It looks somewhat residential. And I just don't like the idea of it being changed with a large commercial venture. Thank you.
Thank you, Arden. Next, Mr. John Veja. Hope I pronounced that right. That's okay. You know what? Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, I'm used to it. They pretty well touched on...
Name and address.
I'm sorry. John Vida, 7925 South Winbrook Court. I am the big trapezoid. My concerns were, they were pretty well met. The building is going to serve nice for a noise block and all that. My concern is cleanliness, big time, just because the owner of the property now, my property line is garbage. So I want anything that can be done to protect the garbage. We were the ones that kind of asked for more densely packed evergreens, just so that we're not looking at a gigantic brick wall. We're standing in our kitchen window. I don't want to see that. You know what I mean? I'd rather see some foliage. And my biggest concern is the sidewalk between us and Karen. There's a sidewalk in between us two.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I see it.
Can that go away? Can that be taken out? Even if we could join lots or something, it's what that's going to do. What I see is, and I understand what Kelly was saying about security. I just see that being a highway for riffraff, and I don't want that in my yard. And if it's not going to do anything, I wouldn't think Kelly wants access to his property either.
John, I'm going to have our planner answer the question.
Short answer is yes. If you contact me after the meeting, shoot me an email, we can discuss the process for vacating that.
That would be amazing. Is that all we had? Thanks for your time.
I think you did good.
Thank you.
Next, Courtney Conway.
Courtney Conway, 7945 South Winbrook Court.
Welcome.
I'm fine with the plans and how everything seems to be progressing. Like everybody has said, it's just a giant wind-blown garbage tunnel over there and on top of the mosquitoes and the bugs and everything else. My concern is, what does this LM1 zoning mean? Karen couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything online. So I guess what I would like to know long-term is, what does this mean? If this venture folds, what could come behind him and build on that property?
Again, in the LM manufacturing, it's flexible, and I'll let Carrie kind of expand on the typical uses that could go there.
Yeah, I apologize that the code has not yet been uploaded to the website. It was just recently passed within the last month or two, I think. They are working on getting that code updated, so it's just taking a little bit longer than anticipated. Basically, the LM1 is supposed to be a bridge between our B4 Highway Business District and Manufacturing District. So it's supposed to create a gap fill there so that you don't get the traditional heavy manufacturing in an area that is not suited for it. The LM1 district has a few permitted uses. We also have some conditional uses. This is the type of conditional use that would require an additional review and permitting. Rather than go into more details about the district, why don't you contact me and I'll give you a copy of the code.
Wonderful, thank you. And then also, what does this do for property value long-term as well? Are you the right people to ask? I'm not really sure.
I mean, development means that the property will have a different assessment because it's no longer vacant land, it's been developed. So the assessor will come out and make a determination as to when the buildings are built, what the value is of that property. So it would raise the value of that particular property, certainly.
But what does it mean for my property?
I understand what you're asking. You would probably want to contact the assessor so that they can give you an idea of how it might affect your property value. I am certainly not an expert. So I would say that because of the value of the property, it might have some effect, but I can't tell you what that might be.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. And lastly, Karen, come on up. No, I'm starting to get better at this whole thing.
Karen Genke, 7935 South Winbrook Court. I'm the other side of the large trapezoid on the opposite side of the sidewalk. And happy to see it go away. Part of my concern was the LM1 zoning. Definitely getting a copy of that. Within that, all of the other self-storage units within the city fall into the M1 zone. Under that zoning in M1, the setback is required at 100 feet. This is, while we were told at the meeting 40 feet, now I see in his schematics 30 feet, which is a really short distance for a brick wall to be smacking you in the face every morning. I understand they talked about some more, denser evergreen coverage in that buffer zone, which is exactly what I was going to request. If in the LM1 zoning that setback is a shorter distance. My other concern is the hours of operation, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. We have a noise ordinance that starts at 7 a.m. I understand it's a relatively low volume generating, but people are still banging down gates of trailers and the like, moving their stuff in and out, yelling to each other, and that's 30 feet off of the property line. I like a consideration for that morning hour to be moved to 7 a.m. as opposed to 6 a.m. to fall within the noise ordinances of the city. The probably last of my concerns that weren't directed yet were the usual 3-foot silt fence that's put around the property until that sidewalk is gone away. That sidewalk is used by young children in the neighborhood who come and either take their bikes or leave them there at the end of the sidewalk and travel on through that empty field on off to Wendy's or even further down to Culver's or wherever to get an ice cream. I don't know that a 3-foot silt fence is going to deter them from traveling through a construction zone while that building is being put up and until that sidewalk is taken down, it invites them to come back that way into the danger of that area. So I think that that's something that should be addressed before, and not even just children, adults, people taking their dogs, whatever. The sidewalk suggests that there's something for you back there. And it's going to take them into the construction area, and a 3-foot silt fence isn't going to deter them from stepping over into whatever will be there during the construction
But at
time.
some point, it's going to be a construction site, so.
Correct.
That'll be up to then the property owner to regulate and monitor what's going on there. As far as vacating that sidewalk, that's not a quick process, is it? I'm just curious.
It's a separate process, and I'd be happy to talk with you, maybe tomorrow about what the process would be.
Fine, but I just, my concern, and not just the danger and policing, during off hours when there's not construction people policing on the site for people not entering the zone. That's going to be really close. We've had 4 years of dust and debris from the Drexel Town Square that wasn't right there in the property, and not being able to have our windows open and the like, and now this is going to be right up there. So I was just wondering if we could have some kind of consideration. I see all of the other construction sites, I know they're by a road, and that's why that's a little bit taller with the 6-foot fence with the whatever plastic over it. But I'm wondering if we can have some kind of consideration for that type of encroachment into the residential area coming in.
We'll see if we can answer your questions. Carrie, do you want to start with the setbacks? LM1 zone?
Yeah, the LM1 zoning district does have different setbacks. It requires 30 feet to a residential district line. The buffer that they're showing is also in a drainage easement, so that's another consideration that we have to have in terms of whether or not, in terms of what can be planted there, in terms of what can be constructed there. That's probably something that staff will have to have a direct conversation with the applicant about and what the options are. But again, that 30-foot setback is a requirement of the LM1 district. The buffering requirements would probably include something like dense landscaping, possibly even decorative fence. Again, those are things that we would be looking for in that buffer area. But again, there are some concerns for the storm drainage.
We all have decorative fences. I don't want to look at another fence. I just don't want to look at a brick wall.
So more landscaping is what you'd be asking.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And with that, maybe we get an answer from the applicant on how they feel about hours of operation. Because currently it's listed at 6 a.m. to 10
Right.
p.m. So we can get them up there for that. And then also construction fence. Could they do a orange snow fence?
Well, and
What's going to be the
there wouldn't necessarily be zoning because it's a construction
Construction
site.
site.
I mean, but the fabric covering for that is something within Drexel Town Square that was requested by Mayor Scafidi. So that's something that we can request during the construction.
the applicant comply with that?
It'd be nice. In the backyard, Dust on the Barbie.
Okay. With that, before we'll have you sit down, we'll see if the applicant wants to come up, address those issues, and then we'll put it to council for comments and questions. That was my last comment sheet. So. Okay, you clear? If you want to start with the hours?
Yeah. So on the hours, again, for having done over 100 facilities in 3 continents and 5 countries, and over 85 here in the U.S., the number of people that show up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday or any day of the week is very de minimis because they'd rather sleep as well. So that's pretty standard across the city with our competitive self-storage facilities. So that's one reason why we picked the 6 to 10. We can police the noise as best we can through the lease by adding to the lease document something that talks about there can't be any, yelling or They can't leave their cars running. There's no honking, and we can enforce that repeatedly through continued comments to the customers that embrace our facility. As to the erosion control fence, we always put a 6-foot cyclone fence around the entire property during construction because we don't want anyone getting in, especially kids. So that will be installed anyway in accordance with what building and planning require as to the location of that fence, so it doesn't contradict the erosion control. So that is, hopefully can help suffice. It'll be one that will block all of the garbage that seems to come through there. As an additional source, all of these buildings will be blocking. There's only one area for that trash to go through at the very top there.
And actually, that was my question. Why does that gap have to be there?
Well, there's a separation there for fire between those two buildings.
Oh, is that what that is?
Dan, are you,
I'm referring to the main building.
Yep.
And then the farthest building that would be to the east.
Okay.
First. That was going to be one of my questions. Does that gap really need to be in there?
That was also building code. So this entire site plan has been adjusted to the building code as well as the turning radius is required for fire. And so that back, the bottom one there by the red retention pond or the blue retention pond at the bottom, that's the emergency access for fire. Okay, so we have an awful lot of buildings that are blocking. We've got 4 buildings that are blocking a majority of any debris or garbage that can come through due to the wind. And our managers will be policing that area on a daily basis to ensure that we reduce any garbage there. It's usually in the morning and then before they go home at night. Why is that important to us and why will it be maintained, to give you some confidence? Up to 30% of our customers are renewals or referrals. Up to 60% of our customers are women. And by virtue of them talking to their friends, whatever gender, they will say if it's clean or not. We cannot afford to have our facility known as a filthy location. It doesn't do me any good, doesn't help lease up units, and it reduces my value. So that is a paramount to a commandment for our managers that they have to keep the facility clean and tidy at all times because we do not want to run the risk of having complaints for the obvious reasons. And I don't remember the last point.
It was just the hours, the fence. Oh, vegetation.
Right.
Added shrubbery or what have you.
Right. So as to that area, we are subject to the requirements through the code and planning and building, and we'll adhere to those. But we have no problem putting in additional whatever per the code to restrict the visual from a pure wall to some nice trees, shrubbery, etc., that'll help reduce that visual.
So right now, you'd still prefer the 6 a.m.
Yes, I would, yeah.
Versus
Mostly because of my competition.
I don't know what's typical in the area, quite frankly. I don't truly know. With that, I don't see any more comments. We'll open it up to comments or questions from the council. Fred?
Yeah, I have a question for the owner. When you talk about a building that's climate controlled 2-story, what are you really storing in there? And what it's, normally you just have a kind of a locker, and I'm just curious of what you want to store in that area.
Right. Karen, right? So Karen's comment when we had our meeting last week was with the stuff that she is repeatedly receiving from family and friends at their location, they want to protect it and not have it be exposed to the weather conditions that are outside extreme heat or extreme cold. So that climate-controlled facility helps maintain approximately a 74 to 78 degree temperature inside, depending upon what time of year it is, or it can go lower, but it's really a humidity control issue so that it doesn't destroy furniture or clothing.
And how do you operate, and, people get onto the second floor, you're gonna have elevators, to
That's correct.
handle all of this? And
Yeah, so we have an elevator. It's not your typical Marriott Courtyard style elevator. It's a larger elevator. Sometimes it's not quite as big as a hospital elevator, but it's a tweener. It's right between those two. And so they'll be able to go up into that, put their stuff on a dolly, go up the elevator, get off that floor, and roll it down to their unit.
Anyone else? Oh, Chris?
Kelly, you're on duty. Do you have anyone on duty throughout is it weekends, during the week? What are the business hours for someone on site, I guess?
Yeah, so the actual office business hours would be from, 8 or 9 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. And sometimes we arrange to have them working on Sunday, but we assess that based upon activity over a 6 to 12 month period. For example, if we visually see that no one comes in on Sundays, there's no activity of any kind, then with that kind of data, we won't have the office open on a Sunday.
I'd like to just go back to the control building. Will you have somebody on staff all the time to get into that building A?
Not really, it's not necessary. The reason being is that there's a panel, a keypad on the outside of that door there at is that north or south? At the south, then to get into the building itself, you have to put in your keypad. So if you were John Q. tenant and you came in and signed a lease, you would only be able to have access to that building. The people who have units on the other side, on the single-story buildings, they don't have codes that go into the building, so only you. Then you'll go up to your specific unit. We have cameras that go down all the hallways, CCTV throughout the whole facility. And we have a system that we employ called Secure Guard. And Secure Guard is an automatic locking system that when the door is down and you put in your code, it will open your door. But when you are done, it locks it from the inside after you leave. So we have really good control over somebody. They just can't get inside that building and can't open it either.
Wally.
I know this is only a concept drawing, but I guess I want to hear from the fire department if you got any problems, with you think the way it's laid out, and I know there's going to be changes probably. This is pretty close to what it's going to be.
Yeah, in defense of him, he probably hasn't had the opportunity to review all of ours. We've done it in accordance with our engineers per the specs.
Mike Resick, Fire Department. We generally make our final determination regarding site access, turning radiuses, code compliance based on the final site plan. Certainly we can weigh in on concept drawings to give some indication if we feel it would be appropriate or we identify any problems that could occur from the design. That being said, and I think Drexel Town Square is a really good example that there are a lot of unique, and we don't want to lock in on any particular feature as part of a concept drawing when it might affect entire access to the site as a whole. So certainly, like any other project in the city, it'll be reviewed by the fire department as part of the site plan process to determine the adequacy for the access. If they've done some preliminary work with turning radiuses and code compliance for access roads, that's a great starting point. That certainly does help the process later on.
Mike, while you're here, will this particular site need additional hydrants in the area, or are the buildings sprinkled?
We'll talk about the two-story building as that site plan comes through. That certainly is something that there are square footage requirements. We don't know what those are yet, so we'll evaluate as we go along. Certainly, we are always going to recommend a sprinkler system in a structure like that. The outlying buildings certainly will also have some requirements, but looking at a concept plan, those generally are undersized. Once again, we would always recommend it, but based on a concept plan, I don't anticipate a heavily sprinklered structure, though we would recommend it. Hydrants would be governed by the water utility and then our local ordinance for placement around structures. We'll work with the site to come up with the hydrant placement that adequately covers that complex. I would anticipate, and I do apologize not knowing what the hydrant placement would be behind Wendy's and in that immediate vicinity. There might be some economies using existing hydrants, but I would also anticipate there may be the need for one or two.
Anything else for Mike while he's up? No? Okay. Any other questions, comments? That I guess we can entertain a motion. I guess the only thing we haven't discussed really is the time. 6 a.m. start, 7 a.m. start.
Look at that when we get the conditions and restrictions.
Yes, you can.
You can?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I'd say then move it along. We're open for a motion then. Kavich will make a motion that the Plan Commission recommend to the Common Council that the property at 275 East Drexel Avenue be rezoned from B2 Community Business to LM1 Light Manufacturing with a conditional use permit for a self-storage facility after a public hearing and subject to the conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Commission at the next meeting on May 9th, 2017.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Great. Thank you very much. Moving right along, item 5E, zoning text amendment. Review an amendment to allow a licensed tattoo and/or body piercing establishments as conditional use in B2. Pete.
Yep, I'll take this one. Last month, we received an inquiry from Meredith Hall about opening a tattoo studio over at the Marketplace. The Marketplace is zoned B2 community business, and currently we do not allow a licensed tattoo or body piercing studio in our B2 district. Back in 2009, just to give you a little history, an applicant, Skin Candy, if you remember them, they were over by the old Ace Hardware, but now the Goodwill. They have petitioned for a change in the zoning district to allow for a tattoo and body piercing studio. And at that time, the location they were looking at was the B4. And so Commission and Council said, well, we can buy into that. We'll do it as a conditional use in the B4 district. And since that time, Skin Candy was the only business that has asked for a conditional use in our highway commercial district. And there was really no need to expand that use. Now we do have someone who is looking to have a tattoo studio in our community business. Tattoo studios, are not as a high impact as other type of commercial uses, and not a high traffic trip generator. Staff is comfortable with expanding the tattoo studio in the B2 district. We do allow for art studios, other artistic things, music, dance. We allow all those. This is just another artistic type business. By doing so, this would expand the business opportunities in the business district in the city by expanding it to the B2. By doing this, this would not allow it in the B1 district, which is our most restrictive commercial district. And in fact, I could not tell you off the top of my head what business in the city has a B1 designation at this time. I'm not sure if it would be really needed for that level of commercial use. If the commission believes that a tattoo and body piercing studio is an appropriate use to include as a conditional use in the B2 district, they can make a recommendation to the Common Council that the text amendment be made allowing both tattoo and body piercing. The reason, even though the applicant wasn't asking for, let me backtrack a little bit, they were asking only for a tattoo studio. For consistency between our B2 and B4, staff recommends including both tattoo and body piercing as both permitted uses or a conditional use in the B2 district. So with that said, staff recommends that the commission recommends to the council that section 17.0313 sub C of the municipal code be amended to allow tattoo and or body piercing studios as a conditional use in the B2 community business district after a public hearing.
Thank you, Pete. With that, I'll open it up, questions, comments. Wally?
Comment, Pete, if it's if we have this as a conditional use, then it would always come before us anyways, correct?
Correct, yep.
So we can look at each individual one, each place on an individual basis.
Yes.
This way? Nothing? Okay, I was here for the B4 thing. It actually was in my district at the time. We pretty much hashed this out back in '09 for the B4 district. It's just kind of an extension of it. Body art's very popular, and again, adds another opportunity for them to rent out their space. So I don't see a problem stopping this. So, with that, motion.
Dickman makes a motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that section 17.0313 sub C of the municipal code be amended to allow tattooed and or body piercing studios as conditional uses in the B2 Community Business District after a public hearing.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Great, thank you. Moving right along, we have item 5F, plan review and site building plans for Margarita City. Gary, or is it Pete? Gary.
We're taking
You're
turns.
taking turns. Nice.
This is a request for plan review for a proposed modification to the existing building to incorporate a 13 by 56 outdoor dining area. This is in the existing building that has Margarita City as well as other tenants in the area in red on your screen. A portion of the curb lane that is existing for the restaurant area is right here. That's actually going to be used for the patio location. The rest of the curb is proposed to remain in place where it is. The patio includes a partially enclosed area with a 3.5-foot tall metal railing, which would go around the perimeter here, meet up with the front of the building. And this is kind of giving you an idea of what the elevation would be as you're looking. This is looking from the south-north. So this is what the outdoor patio would look like. The top portion is kind of indicating where the sunshades would be. Those would be tan, white, and terracotta. Each one is a solid color on 8-foot tall posts that would be attached to the building. And if you wanted to get an idea of what those would look like, that's kind of a conceptual rendering of what they're proposing. They also propose to have party lights underneath those canopy sunshades, similar to what Bel Air Cantina has for their outdoor patio area. Again, they would be under the canopies themselves. They're proposing something to look like this. The lights that they have proposed are red, green, and amber alternating. For consistency, staff has recommended that they be changed to clear. That's what Bel Air has. We also recommend that they be turned off during non-business hours, and just as point of information, regular business hours are Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. and Sunday 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. There are also planter boxes that are proposed within the fencing so that there is some landscaping element incorporated into the outdoor patio area. There's no additional landscaping required for that. They also propose to have some of the asphalt underneath the proposed patio area covered in a color sealant emulsion. This is a concept that they're showing before you for some of the colors that they're thinking of doing. I'm not sure if the exact shapes are going to be like that, but these are the colors that they're proposing. Parking for the restaurant as well as the rest of the multi-tenant building and some of the outlots is shared. So typically what's required is one stall for every 50 gross square feet of dining area, and this would be for the addition of the dining area. However, since the outdoor patio is only going to be used seasonally and parking for the development is shared, no additional parking is proposed. And per section 170404, the Plan Commission has the authority to approve of a modification to the minimum required parking, and staff recommends approval for that. There were other comments that were received from additional departments and were provided to the applicant and their consultant. One is that the plans that were submitted are not to scale. The sunshade material should be fire resistant. That's coming from a code perspective. Egress paths and lighting will be carefully reviewed by the inspection department. That's kind of a heads up for them. It also requires health department review, so they should contact the health department for any kind of permitting that might be required. And staff has also recommended considering incorporating a bike rack into the plans. The overall recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the building plans submitted by Juan Melendez, Margarita City, for the property at 8201 South Howell Avenue, suite number 700, subject to conditions 1 through 6. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Carrie. With that, comments or questions? Mr. Dickman.
I guess to be carried, under the things that you want to have added, you did put in there about the patio lights are turned off. But there was a recommendation that they not be those colored lights. That to be, does that fall under section 4, final lighting plans, or should that be added?
That's more of a staff recommendation for conversation between the applicant and the Plan Commission. It's staff's recommendation that the lights be clear. It's something that staff is not requiring, but if the Plan Commission requires it, we can add a condition.
Is it Wally?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we want to.
Okay. Fred?
I agree with Wally. I think it should be a clear light. Keep away from the various different colored lights that you could have.
Else? Chauncey?
I do. Is the applicant here?
Podium, please. Name and address, please.
Ed Bushman, Victor Construction, South 88 West 22535, Willow Court, Big Bend. I'm here representing Margarita City. Juan Melendez is the operator and one of the owners of the restaurant as well. And I guess they've got other facilities where they have the same kind of party lights, and they use the red, white, and green. It kind of symbolizes the Mexican look, and you know it's on the south side of the building. You know, there's manufacturing across the street from it. It's not like it's a neighborhood or anything like that, I guess. So it's something that they would like to have, or like the Plan Commission to consider at least. One other thing that I just wanted to bring up too that wasn't addressed here, and we just want to address it just so there's no misunderstandings later, is that they would like to have also outdoor music there. Typically, they would have a couple of speakers on the building that would give some ambiance on the exterior. Possibly once a week, or maybe not that often. They also have sometimes live mariachis that come into the restaurant, and they could stroll out onto the patio as well to provide some ambiance and romantic reviews for customers there as well. I guess I would like to make sure the Plan Commission is aware of that and reviews that as well at this time. We did make an application to the Health Department for their review. I don't know if you received anything back, one, or... But, so there was a submittal made to the Health Department as well for their situation. And the sunshade material is, you know, the typical awning type fabric, which is fire resistant, as they put on any other buildings. So we are taking that into account as well.
Can you provide a little more information about landscaping that came up?
There's that existing curb that's 3 feet wide there that we're proposing to leave in place and put the fence outside of that curb area, so that within the patio area, we're proposing several planters with shrubbery and flowers and that kind of thing, you know, kind of give people a little bit private screening and just give a little bit nicer situation there. I know Juan likes Korean lilacs, but that's one of them he requested having one of the planters, but...
And Gary, can you identify what type of traffic occurs on the side of the building? Is it a lot? Is there another business right next to here? Because it seems like the patio is almost at the curb.
Yes, so what I can tell you is that Margarita City has the southern tenant space in the multi-tenant building. And if I zoom in on the location map here, you'll get a better idea of what's in the surrounding area. So right here, this is Taco Bell. This is where Margarita City
Not up on the
is.
screen.
You don't have it.
You're not seeing it. Oh. How about now?
Like,
There we go. Okay. So this is the Taco Bell location here. Margarita City has this southern location here in the building. And the curb here was actually put in as a drive-through allowance for a previous application. There is no development to the west of it. It's an open field right now. Let me zoom out a little bit more. You'll get a better idea of what the neighborhood is like. Woodman's is to the northwest here. Again, this is that vacant piece. This is a daycare center. This is manufacturing. This is manufacturing. This is the old Master Lock headquarters building. And then you have residential across the street. And this is another, I believe it's a dental office here. So in terms of what the traffic is here, I don't have traffic counts. But again, this is a multi-tenant building, Margarita City on the south, Goodwill to the north. I would imagine that there's no parking on this side really. It's all interior to the site and on the outlots. So
Harry, with the parking, I'm sorry, not the parking, but actually you can drive behind the building and you can drive to the south. You know, you can
Yes.
come pretty close to where the curb is actually if you're driving past there. So that is a little concern for me.
Right, it's something that we kind of looked at there, because there's that drive to the west that comes from Woodman's all the way down. Most of the traffic comes there straight out onto, was it Forest View, I think? Forestville. And likewise, most of the traffic that comes out of the parking lot goes straight out to Forestville too. Both those drives come straight down. The biggest amount of traffic that we see come through that cross street to the south of the patio area there are usually semis that come from Woodman's or something. They'll come and they'll park there. And I don't know if they walk over to Taco Bell for lunch or something like that, but they're usually just sitting there in that drive area. That's the majority of the traffic that we've seen during the time that I've spent there.
From my perspective, I've never seen much traffic go through that road either. Again, it was for a previous use. The curb actually kind of acts as somewhat of a buffer, so to speak. If anything, it takes away the option of driving closer to the building. But I actually don't have a problem with the entire concept itself. It's something different. It expands a restaurant. I had the pleasure of doing a ribbon cutting, a grand opening there yesterday. I think just adds another element as far as the lights go. I don't quite really have a preference one way or the other, but I will respect staff's recommendation on that. I think it's neat, and I think it adds another element to the area and choices for dining in the area. So I kind of like the plan. Dawn?
I had dinner there a couple weeks ago, and I noticed that curb was there, as well as like a pad, like for somebody's been parking motorcycles on it, right? During, we were there for lunch. So that I was looking at that, and it is kind of a barren area. No one's using that street. And we really discussed that you need an outdoor patio to compete with the other Mexican restaurants in the area. I have no problem with the colors or the white, as well as the music. I think that's kind of, there's no residential area in there. And I'm glad to see it.
Commissioner Johnson?
Just a couple things. If the fences are fence posts and supports, will those remain there when the structure is removed? I'm more concerned about snow removal and those fence posts or supports getting damaged with snow plows coming through if they're outside of that curb.
They're designed to be more of a permanent structure than they are removable.
Yeah. Concern for
I understand.
the plow driver going up there. They're probably gonna be plowing the snow up against it,
Right.
and potential for them to damage that if it is outside of that curb.
Right, and that was something that we kind of looked at too, and I guess I was thinking about that exact same thing, that if we'd core holes, within the curb area, maybe a foot setback to give it a good enough structural point so it doesn't break off or something. That might be a good observation. It still gives enough room for some planters, a little bit tighter, but
You're gonna remain in place. consider it. I don't have an issue with the lights or the music, but do want to point out that that will be visible from Forest Hill. I don't think it's a big concern for anybody, but
Wally?
I talked about the lights earlier, and after listening to, your presentation, I think the colored lights actually add to it.
Holly, microphone. Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think the lights add to it, the colored lights, what I talked about earlier. But I do think that they should be turned off, in non-business hours, if you
Correct.
agree with that.
So one question that I have is, are those party lights going to be the only lights that will light the patio area, or are you planning on putting a wall pack out there for additional lighting? Or is it going to be restricted by hours of operation? Those are kinds of things that I'm thinking of, because I don't think that the colored lights are going to provide enough lighting for that outdoor patio area, especially if it's covered, unless you add additional lights.
Again, I think they'd have to submit a lighting plan, and our electrical inspector would have to see what the foot candles are per square foot for that application.
Good point.
Yeah, on other facilities that they have, that is all the lighting that they use, and it does, especially with the canopies are over the top, and it does reflect some of the light back. It's not like it's spilling out, outward.
They'll go by foot candles for the area for the use. Much like a parking lot.
There are different wattages of those bulbs, and that's kind of what we look at, to get adequate lighting there for that.
I guess it wasn't in conditions and restrictions, but let's approach music. Pete, you're the zoning guy. How's that affect anything? We've never really come across this issue.
But for the outdoor,
For the outdoor music or a possible mariachi band.
music is regulated by the noise ordinance. There are facilities already in the city that have speakers outside. I believe Starbucks has it. I know Valentine has speakers outside already, so this isn't going to be the first time. Key thing is to keep the noise down. Now, fortunately for this location, it's located in the middle of a commercial district. You don't have residential nearby. If this was the self-storage facility on Drexel, we'd have a lot different conversation right now.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, another question about safety. So what are the safety precautions that you have in place for those that are on the new patio?
Well, that's one of the reasons we have the iron fence and the planters along that curb area. That helps as that barrier for that. And then not only that, you got the taller vertical structure, the vertical posts that support the canopies, and that all creates, so someone can't drive by and not see that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Please continue.
No, that was
okay.
that was it.
Can you enter the patio from the outside or only from the inside?
Well, there is we did propose a gate on the east side of the patio, because that's the only way a wheelchair can access the patio area, because there is a step down from the building to the patio. So we proposed a gate on that east side for handicap access. But primarily, everybody would be seated from the inside the restaurant. If someone in a wheelchair would enter the restaurant, they could take them, back outside and enter that way.
Thank you.
That it? Okay. Motion.
Johnson moves that the Plan Commission approves the building plan submitted by Juan Melendez, Margarita City, for the property at 8201 South Howell Avenue, Suite 700, with the following conditions. 1, that all building and fire codes are met. 2, that all final scale plans, site, building, landscape, etc., are submitted in digital and paper formats for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications. 3, that the patio lights are turned off during non-business hours. 4, that the final lighting plans are submitted for final approval by the electrical inspector prior to submission of building permit applications. 5, that all water and sewer utility connections are coordinated with the Oak Creek Water and Sewer Utility. 6, that all plans are submitted for review and approval to the Health Department.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Kuzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Okay. Thank you. Good luck.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Moving right ahead, 5G conditional use permit for Villa Healthcare at 8432 South 27th Street. Carrie.
Thank you. So this is a conditional use permit for a skilled nursing facility on the property, which will have a different address. The proposed address is going to be 2700 West Honadel Boulevard. You may recall that this was the exact same site of the Villa Healthcare Facility in 2015. Due to unforeseen circumstances, however, that conditional use permit expired, and therefore they are coming back for a renewal of the permit in essence. There are a few changes that have been made since then, since the approval in 2015, however, and I'm going to show you now a new concept plan that was submitted. So this is the facility. It's still a one-story facility. There's a size change from 78,710 square feet to 75,594 square feet for the main facility. The proposed number of units increased from 80 from 72, from to 120 beds from 138. The addition that we're talking about in this plan here, in terms of square footage and beds and units, is for hospice care. So on the north side, there's a little L-shaped building addition that'll add 12,529 square feet, 15 units and 24 beds, again for hospice. There are 2 curb cuts that are proposed on Honadel. There will be no access from 27th Street. They are showing some parking areas mostly located on the western side of the property. They did move it slightly so that it is further away from the residential facility, the residential neighborhood on the east. They've provided a total of 98 parking stalls in this proposed plan. They anticipate peak employees to be about 45 at this time. Parking is based on parking that has been proposed is based on requirements for institutional. However, the zoning for this property is RM1, which is multifamily residential. That requirement is 1 stall per dwelling unit, which would require 140 stalls. However, the use of the property is nursing and hospice care, and therefore very few, if any, of the residents are going to be driving. That would reduce the number of required parking stalls, so you would have enough for that peak employee, plus some parking stalls for deliveries, for visitors, for those kinds of things. Staff's recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council approves a conditional use permit for a skilled nursing facility on the property at 8432 South 27th Street to become 2700 West Honadel Boulevard, after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Commission's review at the next meeting, which is May 9th, 2017. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. With that, questions, comments? Wally?
As I mentioned to you, I was going to talk about the hospice unit because there's 15 units, 24 beds. And I'm assuming that the reason you're having more beds is so if somebody stays, overnight or that with that person. What's the
Anybody,
reason?
can you please approach the podium, please? We'll need name and address.
My name is Grant Reginato with Direct Supply, 6767 West Industrial Road in Milwaukee. The beds are in normal operation. The owner and operator would probably only have 1 person in a bed. It would be during peak that they would have 2 patients in a bed in the hospice. It would offer an option for family to stay overnight as well. So it gives them the flexibility with the actual patient or family to sleep over and be with their loved one.
Yeah, the hospice unit, though, definitely would stand by itself. So if you overload another area temporarily, you couldn't put someone else in there from the main portion of the building?
At this time, the owner is actually going to have a different operator for the hospice because it is a separate license.
Wally? Anyone else? No? Okay. Motion.
Keeper moves that the planning commission recommends that the common council approve a conditional use permit for a skilled nursing facility on the property at 8432 South 27th Street to become 2700 West Honadale Boulevard. After a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the commission's review at the next meeting, May 9th, 2017.
Chandler seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving right along, 5H, conditional use permit, submitted by Gerard Maggie for indoor commercial rec facility. Carrie. Gary.
The request is for a conditional use permit for an indoor commercial rec facility, as was stated. The specific commercial indoor rec facility is actually, sorry, it's not projecting here. There we go. It's a fitness center and martial arts center in the existing multi-tenant building, which is highlighted in red on your screen. This is Liberty Lane right here, and this is Bell Court, the cul-de-sac. So the proposal is for the end tenant space to be operated by this athletic company. So this is just giving you an idea of the tenant space. There's only 2 other tenants in that building, which is important for when we discuss parking. But the proposal is to offer cardio, kickboxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, self-defense cardio boxing, yoga, boot camp, and similar fitness classes and programs in the facility. There was an initial request for massage therapy and acupuncture. However, those uses are not allowed in the M1 district. And upon informing the applicant of that, those 2 specific uses were removed. 8 employees are anticipated to teach the classes and manage the facility. Instructor-led classes require 1 instructor per hour until about 9 a.m. 1 employee will be on site between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., and up to 3 employees would be on site until closing following that. Peak members, a maximum of about 25, are anticipated between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. for the Monday through Thursday classes, and between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Saturday. General hours of operation are proposed to be Monday through Friday from 5:30 in the morning till 10:30 at night, Saturday 8 to 5, and required parking for such a facility would require 1 stall for every 4 patrons plus 1 stall per the employee at the peak shift, which would be about 28 stalls. Suites here share parking, and again, there would be 3 tenants with this one. Other tenants don't have hours of operation past 5 p.m., therefore the peak would not be in conflict with the existing users of the building. No outdoor storage is proposed except for 1 dumpster, which must be in an enclosure or must be in the existing enclosure. The staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council approves a conditional use permit for an indoor commercial recreation facility, fitness and martial arts center on the property at 440 West Bell Court after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Commission's review at the next meeting on May 9th, 2017. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Carrie. With that, questions and comments from the commission. Wally?
I did go to look at it. Let me tell you, this is a hard place to find. Okay, first of all, so if they're going to be using it for what they're saying. I also looked at, and there's a drawing which was sent along here, and it says Suite 500. There is no Suite 500. And then they say Suite 400, according to the drawing, it's got Heilman Worldwide Logistics. That's really in Suite 100, and what's in Suite 400 is actually in motion. So I don't know if this drawing, how accurate this is or what's going on, but there is no Suite 500 unless it's going to be, developed.
So I can try and answer that question. We have an issue with some of our multi-tenant buildings in terms of suite numbering, and the fire department and I have had multiple conversations about these areas, but just because it doesn't show up on this particular drawing that was submitted doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Often when we get these multi-tenant buildings, they have a maximum number of tenants that they can support within the square footage. And then they divide it up based on the tenant's needs. So some of these tenants actually have multiple suites. For instance, the Hellman Worldwide Logistics probably has 3 suites. So the fact that they are saying they're going to be in Suite 500 is probably accurate. There might be some typos somewhere. We'll verify the suite number, but the location is correct.
I say it's a very hard place to find, that's all I know.
It's been there for quite a while also.
I know, but
Believe it or not.
But to get the road to go back there, you're gonna, they're gonna have to have some real signage or something.
GPS.
Yeah, people,
There is a monument sign there that they could probably talk to the owner of the facility about getting their name on.
Ryan, anybody?
Just
Chaucer?
a quick question about the parking. Can you provide a little more information about the parking stalls?
And are you looking for what's required or what's existing?
Both.
What would be required normally would be 28 stalls based on patrons and employees at peak. But the suites share I think it's like 30 to 35 stalls that are on the property. So at their peak, those additional 2 tenants that are there don't have office hours. So there wouldn't be necessarily a conflict with parking there. Also, there is parking, there's another multi-tenant building to the east of there. I'm not entirely certain what their shared parking is like. However, if you look at the screen, this is the building that they're going to be in. There are a couple of stalls up here, and then most of the stalls are in front of the building. So again, it's going to be shared parking, but we don't anticipate a conflict because the peak hours are after the office hours for the 2 existing tenants.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. No, I'm in favor of it, so looks good. Motion, please.
Seifert moves that the Planning Commission recommends that the Common Council approve a condition use permit for an indoor commercial recreational facilities, fitness and martial arts center on the property of 440 West Bell Court after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Commission's review at the next meeting, May 9th, 2017.
Seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Kuzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right. Good luck. Moving right along, 5I, conditional use permits submitted by Kevin Crosby. Unity Fitness and Training for another conditional use permit for an indoor commercial rec facility. Carrie.
So this is for another fitness center that is on 13th Street in the existing multi-tenant building. And this is the particular suite in question. It's about 2,700 square feet of leased space for personal and CrossFit training as proposed. They would have approximately 1 to 2 employees per shift. Sessions of training would be in 2 blocks between 5:30 a.m. and 10 a.m. and between 4:30 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. Peak classes are anticipated in the second block, and there would be a maximum of 6 to 9 participants per class. General hours are Monday through Sunday, 5:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Now, it should be noted that between 10 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., they are proposing to be closed. So there would be nothing happening between those 2 sessions. Required parking would be about 1 stall for every 4 patrons and 1 stall per employee at peak, so about 7 to 11 stalls. Leasing, I've been informed that leased spaces have 9 stalls assigned to them. Suites do share parking, and many other tenants don't have hours of operation during the peak. We did receive 1 email that was from an adjacent tenant or or building owner. I'm not familiar with the business, and I don't have it in front of me, but in other words, one of the people that is in the plan unit development, which has multiple properties in there, did say that they are in support of the proposal, that they have no problems with the shared parking or the hours of operation, and they felt that there would be no conflicts with the existing uses there. And again, there is no outdoor storage proposed for this particular conditional use request. Staff's recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council approves a conditional use permit for an indoor commercial recreation facility fitness center on the property at 9801 South 13th Street after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Commission's review at the next meeting, which is May 9th, 2017. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. With that, questions from the Commission? Right? Left. Okay. I guess we can move right along.
Dickman will make a motion. The Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council approves a conditional use permit for an indoor commercial recreation facility fitness center on the property of 9801 South 13th Street after public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Commission's review at the next meeting, which is May 9th of 2017.
Johnston seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right. Good luck to everybody. I like to see that going on in the city. Tenant spaces being used. 5J, signed plan review proposed by Blair Williams of Wired Properties for the B5 multi-tenant building at 7940 South 6th. Carrie.
This is a master sign plan for the B5 building, which is currently under construction. Signs are subject to review under Chapter 17 and the Drexeltown Square Mixed Use Plan Development District General Development Plan and Regulating Plan. So there are multiple signs that are proposed for this building. The signs that are proposed on the south, west, and north facades are compliant. They are either entry or non-entry special condition facades. The proposed sign on the east, because it is not an entry facade and it is not a special condition facade, requires a variance, as is mentioned in the sign plan. The maximum height per the planned unit development requirements is 15% of the retail floor height. Staff agreed to measure to the top of the brick, which is at 17 feet 8 inches, which is where the visual change in materials appears to signal the retail floor termination. Technically, the retail floor height is lower than that. However, from the outside, you wouldn't be able to tell. Therefore, the allowed height of the signs is 31.8 inches. This measurement is consistent with the other outlot and Main Street tenant signage calculations. This is how we calculate the signage for every other building in the outlot in Drexeltown Square. However, the applicant would like to propose taller signs. Staff recommends approval of the original submission allowing up to 31.8 inches for consistency of application with the existing signs in Drexeltown Square. And the staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves that master sign plan for the B5 multi-tenant commercial building at 7940 South 6th Street. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. With that, questions from the commission? Comments? Anybody? Commissioner Chandler.
Okay, so just for clarity, and I may have missed this, so for the primary sign, their request, how is this different than what the standard is today?
What was proposed in your packets is compliant. What they would like to propose would be a taller sign, so that signs would be not a maximum of the 31.8 inches that we would allow if we measure to the top of the brick, which is what staff is proposing to do. But they would like to increase that and measure to the height of the low height of the metal parapet beyond the brick. So they would, in essence, be looking for a sign that would be a maximum height of 3 feet 3 inches. Whereas under what we are proposing to measure to the top of the brick would be just over 2.5 feet.
So let me ask you this, Carrie. You take the brick as basically your baseline. They want to go up the parapet. Are all the B buildings proposed going to have that same parapet and be consistent that way?
So in other words, this particular building has that metal parapet that has kind of a flourish to the building. The other proposed buildings are either flat or the parapet is just a flat raising of the roof. In other words, there is no flourish. What I can tell you is that the way that staff is proposing to measure the maximum height of the signs is consistent with how we've measured the signs throughout DTS.
My opinion that we stick to that standard so these signs look in scale to future buildings. Does that make sense? Dawn?
I think an underlying question would be, are they using the retailer's logo or are they using these channel letters?
It would be using the logo is my guess.
'Cause, you know, like we saw with Bel Air, it could be completely different. You know, it could be overpowering or it could be
But it still has to
tiny.
fit within that area, yes. It does, you're right. But I mean, as of right now, without retailers named, you don't have much option.
The applicant would have the opportunity to go for a variance.
That's,
You
and
know,
that's what the recommendation
on an
says.
individual basis to address those unique circumstances.
Okay, so also for the flag, so what is different than the standard today for the flag sign?
They're not proposing any flag signs. They are allowed, but they're not being proposed in the master sign program.
okay.
Ollie?
Harry, then, in the recommendation, when you say the west elevation incorporates requirement for a variance, in other words, they would have to come for a variance for anything on that west elevation.
No, on the east elevation.
Well, you've got written west here in the, on your recommendation, Carrie.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's a typo.
Yeah, it should be east.
That condition should not be there. There should have been a revised report that was sent out.
Oh, just strike.
No condition.
Okay, okay.
What are we looking for the sign height then? That in here, or is it just?
Staff is recommending that the proposal, that they allow, that the approval be for the maximum height of 31.8 inches.
Recommendation?
Yes. Because there's a separate request for them to go taller. You would have to make this specific motion about how tall the signs are that you're approving.
We're going to hear from the applicant. Did not realize they were even in the room. Come on up. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Sean Phelan from Phelan Development, the co-developer with Wired Properties. My address is 117 North Jefferson Street, Suite 207, Milwaukee. So, first of all, I'd like to thank you. I know it's getting late, so I'll make this very brief. Probably should have come up a little bit earlier. We agree with, well, let me take a step back. Initially, we felt pretty strongly that the brick and the metal panel should be considered one. And I would say that we were pretty adamant about it, but I would, I thank staff for letting us come in, make our case, pound on the table a little bit. But then what I would say is after doing that, and taking a step back with our architects, we looked and saw, what, the staff recommendation is the right recommendation for the B5 building. The only thing that I would request, if at all possible, is that instead of being 31.8, is if we could be 32 inches, just because it's a standard size. And if that's amenable, that'd be great. As you know, we've got 2 more buildings coming online. Those are going to be coming in the future. That's our B1 and C1 building, and the criteria that staff is taking with regards to using that brick line as the measurement line, we fully support and expect that criteria to be used for the next 2 buildings. And then, if anyone has any questions for me or our architect, fire away.
Any questions for the applicant while we got him up here? Sorry, I should have dragged you up earlier. Apologize for that. But,
No, that's okay.
Thanks for coming up. And again, any heartburn with the 32-inch request versus the 31.8? Okay. All
Great.
right. Good.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's move.
Council moves that the Plan Commission approves a master sign plan for the B5 multi-tenant commercial building at 7940 South Sixth Street with a maximum sign height of 32 inches.
Grillo seconds.
Roll call.
Dick and I.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
David, aye.
Kuzikowski.
Clifford, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Oh, okay. Good luck. Moving right along, second last item of the night, next to adjournment, 5K zoning text amendment. For lighting zoning ordinance. Carrie.
No, I'll
Pete.
take that one. I'll finish the night off. I've been quiet for so long.
Holy cow. I just got in a rut there. We're here for a reason. And this one's important, everybody. Remember, we debated this.
And about a year ago, we were talking about LED strip lighting and what we can do to regulate it. And at that time, I worked with the electrical inspector to figure out a way how we could address dealing with lighting. And at that time, we talked about exterior LED lighting and what we could do. And I had proposed an amendment at that time. And after quite a bit of discussion, staff was directed to talk to legal to see if there was any way that we could just flat out prohibit that type of signage. We're still working out the legal ramifications of prohibiting it, but the chances are right now on the surface looks like it'd be very difficult to prohibit it. You know, what would be the basis outside of it's ugly? Well, like we've talked before, you know, we regulate a lot of things, but we don't regulate ugly. So what we're proposing is two amendments. One is to deal with the exterior lighting section that would talk about architectural element lighting. And so in your report, you know, I have it written out saying architectural element lighting shall be clear or white in nature and shall not flash or strobe. All architectural element lighting requires approval of the Plan Commission. The owner of the property affected by such architectural element shall cause any such lighting to be reasonably maintained so that the lighting is safe and tasteful. Little touchy-feely there, with any burned out bulbs being replaced in a timely fashion. The thought is that anytime someone would want to put any type of LED lighting or some sort, they would have to come to Plan Commission for approval. LED lighting is, you know, one of the more efficient ways to provide accent lighting. There are probably examples all over southeast Wisconsin where buildings have lighting on the rooftops to outline the top, or if they have an architectural feature. That, you know, maybe if it was presented to the Plan Commission showing what it is, maybe it isn't just the bare LED bulbs, but maybe it's illuminated internally, but it provides that an architectural element. So that would be up to the discretion of the Plan Commission. That would address LED lighting on the outside of a building. We feel that we have some teeth in that language where we can at least be able to have people not just spontaneously sprout up LED lighting. One I can think of off the top of my head is Oak Creek Plumbing. You know, one day all of a sudden they have the bright LED lighting stripped on at least on the top of their building. They don't go vertical, or have it inside their windows, which I think is a little more acceptable than the window illumination. Working with the city attorney, we did talk about how we can address that type of lighting as signage. And we do have a section of code that deals with window signs. Right now, the code is written as non-illuminated window signs shall not be subject to the limitations on the number of signs. However, any illuminated window signs advertised in the name of the business or principal service offered shall be subject to the same number of limited signs as you would for a wall sign. Having that you know, allows open signs, hours of operation signs, hot belly, internally lit signs. You know, you can think about any kind that you have out there. The Starbucks sign, that would be something that we should be regulating more strictly. So to deal with the LEDs and to deal with the internally illuminated lights that you're seeing more and more in storefronts, staff is proposing amendment to the section of code that would state, however, internally illuminated window signs shall be limited to either one or two, and looking for direction from the Plan Commission is how we want to do that. You know, two would allow for someone to have their open sign and their logo sign. Example right now I could throw out is Starbucks has their internally lit sign in the window and their open sign. So allowing two would allow that type of window signage. Otherwise, if we go down to one, you know, you're going to possibly put that dilemma for a business owner. Do you have the open sign, or do you have the hours of business sign illuminated, or do you have a wall sign? So by limiting it, that's up to discretion of the Plan Commission. What would be the best way to go forward on that? We've also included language saying permanent non-seasonal LED strip lighting, which frames all or portions of a window, which serve to draw attention or otherwise advertise a business, shall not be permitted unless approved by the Plan Commission as part of the sign of the site and architectural review process. So we're at least addressing that if you put them up, we can come after you because you never got Plan Commission approval. So we think this has legal standing. We're still conferring with the city attorney, but instead of waiting, for that, we would bring this for discussion with the commission to see if this is the right direction staff is going, or if you have any concerns or comments or would like to see us include something. At this time, we're just looking for some feedback so that way we can move forward with these text amendments.
I'll start. Normally I don't, but I'll just say this. We're being proactive about it. I think we should. Sooner the better, quite frankly. Given what's going on in the city and the competition to keep up, I think it's desperately needed. Anybody else?
I agree with you. I think we need to set some type of standard so that we don't get these people carried away by throwing these big open signs and LED signs and so forth. So I think we're on the right direction.
I have a quick question. Okay, so we understand the outside signs, the rules to the outside signs, but I could just put my logo on the inside and face it out and illuminate it?
You are right now, the way the code is written, you have to choose. Either you're allowed to have one wall sign. So you can have an illuminated exterior wall sign, or you can have an illuminated interior window sign.
Okay.
You can't have both.
Okay, so this is in addition to an outside illuminated sign.
Right.
So Starbucks, even though it's inside, it's their only one that's in their window?
Well, right now, the way the code is written, it said, window signs advertising the name of the business shall be limited. So right now, if we strictly enforce the code as right now, we would have to tell Starbucks to get rid of their sign, Jersey Mike's to get rid of their sign, Papa Murphy's to get rid of their sign, Jimmy John's to get rid of all their signs, Crimplebine Chiropractic, and I could probably go on for about another 3 hours. Businesses in the city have not followed this ordinance. The city has not pursued strict enforcement of this ordinance in attempts to be business friendly. However, now that we're getting LED strip lighting, we're coming to the ahead now of what should we do to address this. And so staff is thinking that, you're seeing more of these illuminated internally lit logo signs, that, you can have one of those if you like, or do you say two, so you could have that plus you could have your open sign? What would be the preference for the Plan Commission as a recommendation of the council? Do we just go with the one? Do we allow two?
Okay, you're putting 1/2 here, asking us to which of two.
Now, what would be a good working ordinance with businesses out there today?
Do we have any limit on the size of it?
No more, window signs can't be more than 25% of the
Okay,
glazing.
so that still is in effect.
That's still in effect, yeah. If it's
So they can't make
non-illuminated
it-
or illuminated, yeah, they can't just replace their window with a sign. I mean, there are some that are out there that have chosen to do that, but
So if there's 3, do we go back to them and say, now you can only have 2, an open sign and 1?
What I could do is go right through the whole business district with the existing code and tell them, right now, you want your wall sign, or do you want your open sign right now? You have to choose. That's been on the books for decades. We haven't done it. I have a feeling you'll get quite a backlash from the business community saying, okay, you haven't enforced this in 20, 30 years. I mean, I think it'd be tough to really retro it, but I do think we could start working on getting
I
compliance
think
with.
that would be a tough thing. I wouldn't take a chance of you. I'd send Kerry out to.
I agree with
Hey now.
that.
I'm listening.
I think for the interior signs, I think it should just be two off the bat. It seems like.
I think you gave a good example earlier. The
Right.
two signs could be very
I would
necessary.
agree. I'd
Yeah,
do
cross
the
out
two
one.
and you're still limited by
Yeah.
percent.
And I understand that Drexel is different. So when we had them Bel Air had to take out the tequila, whatever it said, that would be what a business outside of this area could have had? Or is it
Yes.
or does it have to be the logo?
Right now, if it's a logo, like for that logo or a principal service,
Okay.
that's the qualifiers right now.
Okay.
But it wouldn't, stop people from putting, free smells sign and stuff like that.
Motion? Yeah. Did you fall asleep there, Dan?
Oh, no. I'm fine. I think everybody's on the same
Yeah,
place.
I think you guys, this is good. This is really good.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay, Dickman's make a motion, the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council approve amending section 17.0808 outdoor lighting regulating exterior accent lighting. Do I have to add this about just one or two signs, or?
Yes, I forgot to add that into the recommendation now
Okay,
that,
then we
as we
would,
talked about that. So
yeah,
I'll bring up that section of code
Okay.
right now. I had a mariachi band or live music to go on while I'm looking for my.
Put the flashing lights on.
It is 17.0706H. Window signs. So then at the end of the staff recommendation, it would be and amend section 17.0706H regarding window signs as proposed with two internally illuminated window signs being permitted. So
Makes
moved.
that motion.
Kuzikowski seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Kuzikowski.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Which brings us to item number 6.
Carrillo moves to adjourn at 8:47.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Kuzikowski.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Great. I'd like to thank you all for watching, for those of you that did. I'd like to thank our staff for the fine work they did. These are long agendas, and they're very well prepared with that. And also our IT guy, who never gets any credit sitting back there. So,
Would you wake him up?
and also the commissioners, because lately, as a testament to Oak Creek, we have a lot going on. You've done a lot of heavy lifting here over the last couple of weeks. We really appreciate that at the council level. You make it's hashed out. A lot of things are hashed out here to make it a
Wait,
lot
Dan,
easier.
on the outside, I was talking to the church, the gentleman from the church, and they want to compliment the city, the professional staff that they have, that they work with, including our group here. They said it's been a pleasure, even though they had to sit through a 3-hour meeting last
It
time.
really is, and it's not easy. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody comes in and wants what they want, and there's rules, and they get the front end of it. But anyways, thank you all, and as I say every week, go out there, discover and celebrate Oak Creek. Good night.